Welcome one and all, it's time for yet another red hot spicy Warhammer the Old World tournament report featuring the mighty Dwarves. So this event just finished a couple of hours ago, the TSN Arena in Nottingham, 2 days of spicy 2000 point Old World action, and the Dwarves are here again, and Linehammer is real. So, going with this points denial list that I've been trying out, trying to put in a couple of really powerful units that are just not going to die, so the enemy can't pick up too many points. That is the plan, and then the rest of the list is built around encouraging the enemy to walk towards these unkillable units. I use unkillable in air quotes because they can obviously be killed. So there is the army, and that is one way that they could be laid out in a game, in those long lines. So we have Ungrim leading the army as the general. There's Ungrim. So, of course, he can make the hammerers unbreakable by going into that unit. And he's just a bit of a kill beast. And if he gets to fight a monster, then that's even better, because he could potentially just slay it with a single blow with the monster slaying ability. Then we have a Thane. In fact, we have two Thanes. We've got one hiding at the back of the picture there. We've got the Thane with a handgun, freshly painted just before the event. It took me several hours. I was up until 2:30 in the morning just before the event painting this Thane with a handgun so I could put him in the list. And anyone who knows Thanes and handguns knows this combo. So, the Thane with a handgun and has the following runes. So it's the Master Rune of Bursting Flame, the Rune of Accuracy, and the Rune of Rapid Fire. So, he has two shots. They always hit on threes regardless, there are no negative modifiers whatsoever. So if he's moving, shooting at skirmishers, he can only see their toenail, it doesn't matter, he always hits on threes with both of his shots. When they do hit, they turn into 2d3 hits each. So potentially you can be looking at a lot of handgun hits there. So that's the Thane combo. Then we've got another Thane who is lurking in the background there, who is the BSB, who has the Master Rune of Grungni and the Rune of Confusion. So the Rune of Confusion is the one that gives you a disordered charge when you charge into the front of the unit that he's in, and he's most likely going in the Hammerers to combine with the Master Rune of Hesitation that they have, which gives the no charge rules such as impact hits or lances and such. So both of them combined, very nasty, and the Hammerers also have a Rune of Battle on their banner as well. And the Master Rune of Grungni, if I didn't say, that gives a 5+ ward save to the Hammerers as well, and a 6+ ward save to nearby units in the shooting phase. Then, continuing heroes, after that side little diversion for Hammerers, because it is a combo, we have the Doomseeker. Doomseeker with the extra large butt cheeks. And he's only 50 points, so just a naked Doomseeker running towards the enemy as fast as possible. If he gets killed, that's fine. Doesn't give them any victory points. He only gives victory points if he stays alive, so he wants to get himself killed. So he's going to be sprinting towards the enemy as fast as possible, which isn't very fast for a dwarf, but he's going to give it his best shot anyway. Then we can see a different angle of the Thane here. And we've got, in core, we've got 29 rangers, which is a lot, I will admit. So they've got all the upgrades. They've got shields, great weapons, throwing axes, crossbows, command, and they've got the Rune of Courage, which will prevent them from having to take any fear or terror tests, because we don't want them running off the table, because that is a 468 point unit without even any heroes in it. 29 of them. Then we've got in special 19 Hammerers, so another enormous unit, and that is 433 points, and they have on their standard the runes I already told you about. They also have full command and they're drilled, and all my units have been given shields, by the way, because there will be occasions where the enemy wisely think it would be a silly idea to charge straight into this line I have, especially if I'm running them super wide, which I usually will be, and I'll explain the reasoning behind that and why I think it's silly as well in a minute. But generally, there's going to be enemies out there that want to shoot me instead. So having shields on everyone just gives them that extra save when they're not in combat and using their great weapons. Then, that is the lot. So that's the entire list. It's the Dwarf Grand Army. And What is the thinking behind these ridiculous lines, you may ask, that may well be deployed this way? Well, certain things in the game I think are a bit strong, like dragons, other big flying stuff. They would definitely think twice about hitting any of these units in the front, because against the hammerers, you're not going to have an initiative bonus, and you're not going to be able to have any impact hits or any of that cool stuff. The hammerers may well be hitting you first. If Ungrim's in there, he probably will be, because he's got a decent initiative. And even if you strike, if I think you're a danger to the unit, then I would just challenge you with one of the hammerers, because they're unbreakable with Ungrim in there, so you'd get through one hammerer per turn. So you can really hold up a ridiculously powerful monster that way, if you feel that's the way to go. And if you don't, because they're in such a long line, you can just say, okay, I accept that some of them might die, but I'm going to hit you with 20, or however many are left, hammer attacks. And you would think that would be enough to smash most things. Then, oh yeah, I didn't even mention the runesmith, I skipped over him. So it's a runesmith with 3 runes of spell breaking for the auto dispels, so 3 times per game if the enemy's within 18 inches of him, and if he goes into the rangers, he can give them armor bane 4 on their crossbows instead of 2, and flaming attacks. Which isn't always a good thing to have flaming attacks, because sometimes you'll give ward saves to units with that. Then, where was I? So the rangers, if you charge into the front of them, you're going to have to eat a lot of stand and shoot, depending where you are, which ones can actually see you. If you're anywhere near the middle, most of them will see you. And if you're too close for the crossbows, then the throwing axes can still be thrown at you. And how many are you realistically going to kill out of 29? Let's say you're an obscenely powerful monster. You would hope to maybe kill 8. That would be a dream round of combat, wouldn't it? Killing 8 dwarves in one round with a big monster. Like, most monsters don't even have that many attacks. So, you kill 8. That means there's still over 20 great weapon attacks coming back at you. And I think you would find that quite scary as a monster, because it doesn't take a ridiculously spiky roll to kill you. So I think people would be hesitant to charge both the units. They're going to want to whittle me down first or multi-charge them. If I'm up against Bretonnians, I'm probably not going to run this wide, because there's so many Pegasus Knights and Flying Dukes around that could charge 3 or 4 units in there at once. But even if I manage to get the optimal level of stand and shoot and maybe kill a few knights, that's not going to be enough, because they would just all get wiped out by 4 different fighting units hitting them at the same time. The hammerers don't have that problem, because if you charge into the hammerers in the front, then you're probably not striking first. So I wouldn't be concerned about them being multi-charged so much, especially if Ungrim's in there as well. The 5 dwarf warriors are in there just because you need to have 3 units that aren't heroes and war machines, I think, to make the army legal. And it just fills up the core a bit more, because the ranger unit's already big enough, maybe. I could have taken a different unit instead of the dwarf warriors, but you never know, they might come in useful, or they might just be easy points to gobble up. The enemy will, of course, try to go for the rock throwers and these dwarf warriors. They would be easy points compared to everything else. But if that's all they can get, then I'm confident I can shoot off a couple of things with all these crossbows, and the Thane with a handgun, and the grudge throwers, so that they will have to get greedy and commit to try and kill one of these big units, which hopefully will backfire on them. So that's the plan. Going into the first round against Orcs and Goblins with a lot of Night Goblins and Fanatics. So what do we have here? We have a Night Goblin Big Boss, and let's see, where are the close-ups? Here we go. So there'll be a Big Boss somewhere in there, on foot, and that is the Battle Standard Bearer with the armour of Meteoric Iron. So I don't know if it's actually in a unit, I think it's that one there. So reasons not to be in a unit of Night Goblins: they might run away, and you don't want your hero to run away with them. Could be some logic there, and as long as you stay close to them, then you're not going to be too targetable anyway. Good evening to Wraith and Nukeman. Yes, goblins, not just orcs, but goblins. Then we've got a Black Orc Warboss on a Wyvern with the Trollhide Trousers and Charmed Shield. So, Wyvern with 3 saves, although the Charm Shield is only a one-off save. So it's like 2.5 saves, let's call it that. So it's not the full-on, mega unkillable Wyvern that just has 3 really good saves. It's got 2 good saves and 1 little save that it's not going to get very many times. Then there's a Night Goblin Big Boss with a giant cave squig who is out round the back somewhere. I think he's out. I think it might be that one. In amongst this lot of squigs there. He's in there somewhere. And he has got Ruby Ring of Ruin for some nice fireball action and a Charmed Shield as well. There is a Night Goblin Odd Knob, level 4 wizard on foot with the Flying Carpet, Lore Familiar to choose spells, and Illusion. And I think it's the Illusion Lore of Magic that has the spell that stops you from charging. So there's a wizard there. And there's also a wizard here. So I think it's this one that's on the carpet. Then, hold on. Oh yeah, I've missed one. There's another level 4 wizard on foot with the Idol of Gork and Waaagh magic, which I'm going to guess is this one here. Yes. Then in core, there's 30 Night Goblins, and 21 Night Goblins. They all have the maximum fanatics, so 3, 3 and 2 in the units, so lots of fanatics. They've got command in those units, and I think they've all got full command. The 21 unit actually doesn't. It's this one here. That doesn't have command. That just has short bows. So they're a bit of a shootier unit. They do have the fanatics though. Then there's 5 Black Orcs who are with great weapons hanging out here in one unit. In special, there are 3 Stone Trolls over there on this side with great weapons, and 5 Squig Hoppers who are over on this flank here with the Squig Boss. Then in rare, there's 2 Doom Diver Catapults behind the hill there, ready to fire off indirectly. So there's a shot of my Thane with a handgun staring out towards the enemy. And let's look at my deployment setup here. Well, you can see the hammerers are not in a long line. They may well go wider, but with Doom Divers and lots of spells at range, there's potential that I might actually want to close in on the enemy here. So if I just went in a super long line with the hammerers behind this, then I don't think I would be particularly manoeuvrable. I may want to move them forward at some points. They're wide enough so that they could still do a good job on any of these units, and they could certainly go wider if they want to charge, but they may want to walk forwards. The Rangers are going super wide because they just want to blast everything with crossbows if it comes forward, and even if it doesn't, if it just sits there, I'll keep shooting them and hopefully make the Goblin units break and flee with casualties, because I'm very unlikely to finish them off with shooting because there's so many models in there, but kill enough so they run away. And Trolls, I'm not too concerned about them. I think a good stand and shoot would kill them. That might be me being overconfident because they do have multiple wounds each. The rock throwers, I've given them a view past the hammerers, so another reason not to go super wide at the start, so you can actually see past them. Not just at the wyvern who's hiding behind the woods initially, but I can land on the goblins and maybe do big damage on them, because even if it scatters a bit, it should still hit some of them. And 5 dwarf warriors down here with no real plan at all. Their whole job is to just stand still and not die. They're only in there for the unit minimum. The Thane is in the woods to shoot out in case anyone wants to come and fight. Then they would have to go into the difficult terrain. The Doomseeker I put down before the Rangers, because they're obviously scouts, so you can put them down at the end. So the Doomseeker was deployed here, hoping that he would just go forward and try and seek his doom against the Trolls. But then, based on my opponent finishing the deployment, I then decided to put the Rangers here. I was thinking of putting them over on this side, but my thinking was that all the Squigs, the Squig Boss, the Wyvern, and the Black Orcs would probably all steam down there at full speed, and that might be too much for the Rangers to deal with. And the Hammerers aren't getting over there anytime soon. So I thought I'd keep everything nice and compact here. Well, I say compact and then the line stretches halfway across the table. But the stuff coming around that side is mostly going to be random movement with squigs. So by the time they get here, hopefully won't be too much of an issue. And there's one of the Rangers there who just hasn't been deployed in the line yet for some reason. I've put the Runesmith in with the Hammerers as well. So all the heroes in there apart from the Thane with the handgun. There he is. So I've made a bit of a mistake here because, well, it wasn't a mistake at the time because I thought I was going to put the Rangers over there. But then based on the enemy deployment, I then put them here, which means the BSB and the Runesmith are now not very close to them. Because I would have liked the BSB in particular to be at this end to obviously benefit them. And the Runesmith at some point might like to hop into that unit. So as it stands, he's a bit too far away for that. So, here we go. turn 1 for me, so I'm going first. The rangers don't have to move at all, but you can see the Doomseeker moves to get round them into the woods and immediately takes a wound from the dangerous terrain test. Which isn't the worst thing in the world, because my backup plan for the Doomseeker, if I'm up against nothing but flyers that would be able to successfully avoid him for the entire game, then I could just move him back and forth in the difficult terrain and wait for him to die that way. It's not a very honourable death, but it still counts according to the rules. So if the Slayer falls into a rabbit hole, breaks his ankle in half, and just dies a slow, agonising death in the woods, that still counts as honourable. So, crossbows and stone throwers managed to clear out some of the goblins, and you'll see actually that they were all in marching column at the start because they want to get as close as possible and then blast the fanatics out towards me. So I spread out my fire, trying to whittle each unit down out of marching column. So that is the strategy here, and you can see it's worked on these 2 units. And the Thane with a handgun does a good job on the unit in the middle as well, and the grudge throwers land. This unit though, I do not knock them out of marching column because they're a bit more narrow, so it was more difficult with them. So they're going to be able to triple march forward. And they're goblins, they wouldn't care about taking dangerous terrain checks because they're useless goblins anyway. And they're only a fanatic delivery system and sometimes a character delivery system. So, no panic checks yet, and into turn 1 for the goblins. So, one of the Doom Divers instantly blows itself up at the start of the game, which is great for me. And the squigs, all the random movers, start going forwards over the hill, but they don't go that far, turn 1. You can see this triple marching unit has moved forward there, and the 2 slower units, because I shot them out of marching column with the wyvern behind them. So I'll have 1 turn to shoot the wyvern before it parks right in front of me and has the choice of where to go. I do not want the wyvern to land around here somewhere and then charge the war machines, because I'll have to turn around to deal with it, or get Ungrim out the unit to threaten him. And ideally I would rather just kill it while it's there, so I'm going to have this turn to throw rocks on the wyvern, hopefully. We have some fanatics out at the start of my turn, so one of them reaches the rangers, one of them reaches the hammerers. Yeah, so into my turn you can see where they end up. This one goes far enough to get to the hammerers, that one through the rangers. These 2 are just out in no man's land and going to be moving randomly around from now on. So not all the fanatics were unleashed, but several of them were. The rangers do take a small amount of damage, I think, yeah, just 1, and then a couple of hammerers died as well. The Doomseeker also moves in difficult terrain and kills himself. 2 1s in 2 turns, so the Doomseeker is already dead. So he's kind of done his job, but he would have liked to fight something first. That is really his job, not just break both ankles in different rabbit holes in the same forest clearing and just die lonely in the woods. So that's quite sad for him, but at least I'm not giving up any points for it. So the enemy are closing in, but you will notice I have completely shot off this unit of goblins right here. So we've got Andrej in the chat. Good evening, or Andre. See, Nukeman made a 200-point Slaughter Seeker. You can totally tool up either Doomseekers or other Slayers. You can put the rune on them that gives them the same ability so that they don't give away victory points when they die, but they do if they live. And you can make a list that's built around that kind of thing. And as long as you can get them killed, it's okay. If it's an army that can just hide from you, it's not so good. So, 1 unit of goblins dead, which is great. And we've got 2 more to deal with now. Finishing off units is a struggle for dwarves usually, because they don't have anything to chase you down with unless you're taking gyrocopters. So you can't really afford to be chasing like 1 goblin across the battlefield. You can see all the fanatics are still hanging out there, and in the next turn they're going to be able to move. So with the shooting, yep, the Thane with the handgun and all the other shooting combined manages to kill the goblin unit there. The grudge throwers do not successfully do anything to the wyvern. One of them scatters off. I think it landed on the wizard but didn't wound him. Yeah, it did. The hole right over the wizard but failed to wound. And let's see where the fanatics go in the next turn. Now you can see there, those are the remaining fanatics in the unit position there. So I think this isn't the enemy turn now. This wizard puts a wound on himself with a miscast, which is fun. And then the squig boss and the squig hoppers are working their way around this flank, but they're not in threat range yet. The fanatics, most of them manage to get around the hammerers. One of them pops through, one of them stops right there, one of them just moves this way a bit. And the one behind the rangers kills itself by rolling a double. And the wyvern is now in striking distance. You don't want to get into charge range of the hammerers because you would have to be a fool to do that. Because you would have to flee, otherwise you would get killed probably. So, safe distance from the hammerers. And when you're facing down a unit that's drilled, also remember to factor in they could go wider. So if your estimate of the charge distance is based on them having to pivot first, or wheel, then make sure you factor in that they could potentially add to their frontage, and thus charge in more of a straight line rather than a diagonal. Wizard hiding, and the Grudge Thrower takes 2 wounds from a magic spell, and some more hammerers get killed by magic spells as well. This unit does have magic resistance 2, because they've got Ungrim and a runesmith in there, who both have 2. So if you spread them out between the 2 Death Star units, then you actually get more value for the magic resistance, because they both go up to magic resistance 2 then. And there's a giant vortex that's landed right here. So it's just it's one that you can't see through or move through. So I'm not going to be able to charge through it, I don't think. And you can see I've got 1 auto dispel left, because the wizards have been in range of the runesmith. So I've been using those to shut down the most annoying things, which would be generally any kind of spell that reduces my toughness is something I'm going to try and auto stop. Or a pillar of fire is generally very annoying, try and stop those. Or if there's something critical to the enemy game plan, such as letting one of their units move again, I would consider it on those, if I think it's going to put them in a very dangerous position. Owen says, poor fanatics, they're quite expensive, I don't think they've made their worth yet. No, but they are still in play. And this thrower takes a wound as well, at range. And onto my turn, so what am I going to do in this situation? What would you do? Would you shoot up the trolls and try and get rid of them, try and get rid of the damage threat? Or would you take this turn to blast everything into the wyvern and look for 6s to wound it? Because I think that's what I'm going to do. Because if I let it have the next go, it'll charge into this Grudge Thrower, probably. So, what am I going to do to deter that? Let's find out. So the Fanatics move again first, and blast in around the Rangers, do some damage there. These ones, that one stays still, that one stays still, and this one moves off between the 2 Grudge Throwers, just to be extra threatening. And with my shooting, then I'm able to take down a load of goblins. And with the Thane with a handgun, I'm able to do a wound to the wyvern. I don't know whether I shot the crossbows into the goblins or not. I may have decided to do that in the end. And the rocks, where do they land? Well, they don't do much, sadly, this turn. So you can see I'm whittling the goblins down, but not that significantly. The trolls are still at full health, or the wyvern almost is, so it might be able to charge the Grudge Thrower now. But you'll notice I have pulled Ungrim out of the unit and faced him backwards. My hope is that that'll encourage the wyvern to instead charge the rangers, who can have a massive stand and shoot session against him. Because if you charge the Grudge Thrower, then you would probably have to then run off the table to stop being charged by Ungrim, who could then just move around here somewhere and wait for you to come back. If he wanted to. Although that would be, you'd be taking yourself out of the game for another turn anyway, so I might not bother, I might just pop him back in the unit and wait for you. So, turn 3 for the Orcs. You can see the charge has been declared. The wyvern into the rangers, this is what I want. This is a good test of whether this line is going to work. And, well, what's this, you may ask? These are my rolls. Those were the to hit rolls that failed. And then I'm wounding on 6s. Looking for 6s to wound. How many dice is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I've lost track of where I was now. 5 there. 10, 15, 19 dice, I think that is. So, what do we think about that? 19 dice, not a single 6. Because I was relying on that a little bit for the combat resolution. I would have liked to have got a couple of wounds through there. That would have been nice, the +2. And then the great weapons maybe do another 2 after the wyvern strikes. So, however many he kills then, which is likely to be, let's say 6, I wouldn't be losing combat by much, if at all. So, that's a bit sad that I didn't manage to roll any 6s there. Fanatic running wild. and another one is just heading off to nowhere. So I think this one actually went through the Rangers and killed a couple of them, but this one did not do anything too scary. Okay, so you can see that the Squig boss is now in position to attack the War Machine next turn, which is not very nice. But you can see how the deterrent did work, because I asked my opponent about it as well. He did say that because Ungrim was there, he chose not to attack the Grudge Thrower. So goes into the unit that I want to be charged, but no 6s to wound, so no wounds done yet. Trolls and the Goblins move up as well. They can't charge yet because they're slightly out of range, I think, but for support. If the Goblins had also been able to charge in, I would probably stand and shoot against them, because I would kill 1,000,000 of them, and that would be a lot of combat resolution. So, the Wyvern, oh yeah, you can see the Foot of Gork has gone down here as well, which is a very dangerous place for it to be, because if it moves anywhere, it's going to land on multiple units, perhaps. And I've run out of auto dispels now. We've also got some vortex spells there as well. I think it's just this one, I think. The small one was just there for the Doom Diver. So, you can see casualties are starting to pile up. The Wyvern issues a challenge, and I refuse the challenge because my thinking is, I've got nothing on my stand and shoot. If I accept the challenge, he's going to get overkill, probably score, like, what's the maximum? 6? Can you get 5 overkill? Score 6. I've only got a standard bearer, so I would be significantly down on leadership. Whereas, if I make him hit the whole unit, he might kill a few, but then I get to hit back at him and should do some wounds as well. So I think statistically, refusing the challenge here brings me closer in terms of combat resolution. And that is the goal. A nice upside down picture there will show you that I then was down by a couple in combat res, maybe by 3, but I rolled an 11 and I'm just outside of BSB range because I keep forgetting to move him down this way in the hammerers. So that means they're going to flee, which is very sad. And they die. But I did 2 wounds back to the Wyvern. And yeah, the very expensive Ranger unit is dead. Wow, wow, wow. The kind of thing they're designed to deal with in the list is the very thing that slaughters them, because they just don't do very well with their attacks. The stand and shoot, which was obviously not great, and then in combat they're better because they have hatred against greenskins, and they also have strength 5 in combat as well, so they're wounding on 5s. Hitting on 4s, re-rolling all of those attacks, and then wounding on 5s. You'd expect a few of those to go through, but not many of them did, and then the Wyvern has obviously got some good saves. Not as good as the usual Wyvern build, though, which has 3 different consistent saves throughout the game. This one only has the Charmed Shield. So Ranger's dead. So that's a bit of a sinking of the battle plan, but the Hammerers and all the heroes are still alive. You can see I've also put the Thane with the handgun into the unit because I didn't want him to be targeted by anything. He was previously there. So, onto my turn 4. The Fanatics are moving. One of them heads off this way. One of them gets to... Hold on a sec. So I think this one actually gets to the Stone Thrower, or is it the Foot of Gork that does that? It may have been the Foot of Gork. Something randomly moves onto the Stone Thrower and kills it, which is very sad. I've moved my 2 Dwarf Warriors over this way. Let's see. Dirty Deed says, those Rangers fled in completely the wrong way, looks like. They should have pivoted away from the battle. Well, let's have a look. So, my understanding is that you go from centre to centre of the unit. So the centre of that unit is here, the centre of my unit is about here. So you draw a line between those 2 points and then flee in that direction. Does anyone know of any reason for that to not be the case? Fleeing from here through here. So this sort of way. And he actually, I think he restrained and reformed, which is why he's still in that area. I think. Oh no, he didn't. Because, yeah, he caught me, but I only ran about 2 inches, so that's why he's here. Yeah, so I ran like 2 or 3 inches, wasn't very far, and he ended up there, and then at the end of it, he was able to do his pivot and was facing this way. So that's why he's here. So he didn't actually flee in like this direction. The pursuit was over there, He ate them and then spun round this way. So maybe he could have been a little bit higher up, possibly. Is where he maybe should have been at the end, if that's what you're referring to. So, they're dead. Then, the Fanatics, stone thrower gone. This one loses a crew member after misfiring, and it's facing the wrong way because it can't shoot next turn either, so that's very sad. And I don't really have much shooting apart from the handgun, which popped out so it could shoot the orc boss on Squig. And guess what happened? He didn't kill the orc boss on Squig. I think I just missed both of his shots. So that is very sad. Dirty deeds. Yeah, I guess it wasn't that big of a difference as the flea was so short. Yes, when you roll a low number with the dwarves, it becomes a very low number with the -1, so you don't have to pursue very far to catch them. So pop out the unit to shoot, horribly fail with the handgun Thane, which is going to happen sometimes. On 3s to hit, occasionally you will just roll a 1 and a 2. And you have to accept that. He's not even that expensive for the points that he is probably worth, I would say. I think he's quite good value. Turn 4 for the Orcs and Goblins now. So the Hammerers at this stage haven't been moving forward too much because there's been a vortex around them all the time. And also the spell that prevents them from charging has been cast on them a couple of times. So I've mostly just been leaving them there thinking, well, they're not going to kill much, so I'll just wait here until I get rid of the vortex. And the enemy aren't going to kill this unit anyway, by my reckoning. Turn 4 for the Orcs. So the Wyvern, let's see, charges these dwarves, and I want the Wyvern to be off the table for a turn. I don't want the Wyvern to kill them and then stand here and stare at my either Hammerers, which is maybe the only way you could do anything to them is if you send multiple units into them at once. But even that, I wouldn't do it if I was the Orc player. But more importantly, it could then charge the Grudge Thrower, who may well survive a round against a Squig boss, you never know. And that would also put 2 of them in prime position behind my lines as well. And the Squig Hoppers could be down here by then. So I flee with the 2 Dwarf Warriors, intentionally, so that this guy will hopefully keep going too far and go off the table. And that is what happens, so that works a bit. So the Dwarf Warriors give up their lives so that the Wyvern has a much higher chance of being off the table. Which is a legit thing to do if you've got a little chaff unit at the side of the battlefield and something charges, fleeing knowing you're going to die, but knowing that there's nothing for the enemy to redirect into and that their movement is so high that they're very likely to also go off the table, means they can't then charge anything in the next turn because they're off the table. So it's a valid strategy there. Feel free to steal it. The Fanatics, not doing too much that's terrifying. However, the Squig boss does get into the Grudge Thrower. And the Foot of Gork is back, which isn't going to be fun if that hits anything. And the Grudge Thrower is dead anyway from the Squig boss, so we don't have to worry about any Wyvern antics there. So we're just down to this big Death Star now. So in my turn 5, well, the Thane makes up for last turn a little bit by killing the Squig boss with his gun, and the Hammerers actually move forward this time after I managed to dispel the vortex. So next turn they may well have a charge, and the enemy might have to decide whether to throw any units towards me. Turn 5 for the Orcs and Goblins. The Wizard blows itself up and almost dies, which would have been a hilarious end, but still alive. The Black Orcs, you can see some of them have died. I think that was from a Wizard miscasting earlier and just blew up 2 of them. They put themselves in front of the Hammerers. And as soon as I see this, I think that's an interesting situation now, because if I charge them on my turn, I can use Drill to not be so wide for an overrun, and then I could potentially hit the Goblins as well, and then fight the Goblins in the Goblin turn 6 and maybe kill 2 units. So that would be interesting, and if they flee, I'll be able to redirect the charge and have a medium length charge at the Goblins. So I should be able to hit something, hopefully. Wizard hiding, because you don't want to get killed. And what do I manage to do there? So was anything there? Because there's a picture of an empty space. It could just be the Foot of Gork going away. Maybe a picture of that. So, into the enemy turn, and the Wyvern's back in play, hiding behind the woods, so he doesn't get shot. And then you can see we're going into my turn 6. Now, these guys have been debuffed a bit. I think that was giving them -1 toughness, perhaps? Is it toughness and initiative it drops? Is that Itchy Nuisance that does that? So that's been placed on them. It's my turn 6. Hammerers, charge the Black Orcs. Black Orcs, flee. The Hammerers redirect the charge into the Goblins and roll like a pair of 2s or something. Just not enough. Don't make it. So just move the small distance there and they're not going to fight. So it's definitely the right move to flee the Black Orcs, because if they hadn't, it's possible both these units could have been dead by the end of the game. And that would be a decent chunk of points, which could swing it significantly. Let's see. I do manage to shoot off the character over here. It may have been the Battle Standard Bearer or a wizard, but the Thane managed to gun him down because he was slightly too far away from the bunker of goblins there. So that's got me some nice points. And that's the end of the game, like that. So Squigs are alive, Wyvern's alive, a couple of goblin units, Black Orcs, Doomdiver, Trolls, and I've got my Death Star, which doesn't look like a lot, but that one unit with the heroes in it and this guy are well over 1,000 points. They're about 1,250 points, I think, that I've still got on the table. So, the final score. Let me have a look. Pulling up the final result page here for that game. So, my opponent killed 763 points worth, and I killed 528 points. So, you can see that if the Hammerers had managed to kill the Black Orcs and these Goblins, then that would turn it straight into a draw, I think. Yes. So, it's a very tiny loss. In the TSN Old World square-based events, then the first 100-point difference in the points destroyed differential turns it into a win, and then after that, each 200 points elevates that win by 1. So it starts off, goes into an 11-9 for the first 100 points, and then there isn't another 200 after that to account for, so it just stays at an 11-9. So a very small loss, and I would think that's like the worst kind of loss I'm going to get with this list, because I'm not going to lose both my mega units, surely. It's very difficult to chew through them. So on to round 2 in the Mountain Pass, and it is Orcs and Goblins again, and a totally different deployment this time. So with Mountain Pass, I could have just deployed both my units in a big long line across the whole table like that, but I'm not doing that. What I'm doing instead is using this controversial formation, which has the Hammerers behind and the Rangers all in front. So the stuff that would be able to kill a unit of 29 Rangers, you're going to have to put so much into them. And some of these units have, I think some of them have Frenzy as well. So they would have to overrun and thus go into the Hammerers, so I'd be able to kill them then. So if you want to kill the Rangers, the Hammerers are going to chomp whatever's there afterwards. That's the plan. We'll see if that works. This area here is not that well defended, but you will notice, where's the Doomseeker? Here he is. He's hiding behind this building, so anyone that comes around this side, the Doomseeker is going to hide just out of sight, and as soon as you pop out to get yourself a charge, he's going to then charge you. That's the plan for the Doomseeker, guarding this flank. War Machines, they've got a large target Wyvern to shoot at again. So I'm going to pull up the list for round 2 now. It's a totally different list, as you can see, but it still has a Wyvern. So let's have a look at the list for this one. Optimus says, are there points awarded for fleeing units? There are points awarded for units that are fleeing at the end of the game, or units that are below 25% of their starting number. You do score some points for that, but not a lot compared to the total unit. So the way Old World scoring works, it rewards you if your unit is heavily damaged to just hide behind something so you can't be finished off, because you preserve a lot of victory points that way. Which I think is bad game design. That's just my opinion. But no game's perfect, and I think that's something that could be improved upon. The scoring in the Old World, I think, should change. Because that just doesn't feel like the way a battle should go. It feels like if you're down to your last couple of troops, it should be, alright, we're not going to win this game, but we're going to go and take someone down with us. Who's with me? Yeah! And then everyone rushes in. The last few guys get cut down, but maybe they kill a few enemies first. But you don't really have any of those moments, because it's more beneficial to just hide when you've taken heavy damage. Hopefully that is a thing they address, and I think you could easily do that just by changing the scoring system to give us more scenario-based wins, It doesn't have to be like Age of Sigmar where you're hopping all over the table scoring objectives. It can be simple stuff. For anyone who's played Kings of War, the scenarios in that game are quite simple, and you don't have to do too much hopping around. It's usually just hold a particular area or carry a token to the other side of the table, that kind of thing. So very simple, but it gives you more to do than just killing each other. Okay, so what have we got in this list? This is the Nomadic Waaagh, which means we have lots of cavalry. We have an Orc war boss who is on a wyvern, trollhide trousers, talisman of protection. So 3 powerful saves. There is a Black Orc big boss who is on a chariot and also has trollhide trousers and a charmed shield, that one has. So 3 saves, one of them's only a little one-off charmed shield save. And I think it's this one here, which is the Battle Standard Bearer. So that is actually 1 less point than the wyvern, so those 2 are both very powerful. There's an Orc Weird Knob on a boar, so that's a wizard with the battle magic, so there's potentially going to be some Pillar of Fire here with the lore familiar, so you can just pick the spells. And the glowy green amulet, I can't remember what that does, and also the Ruby Ring of Ruin. Then, let's go back and see. So the Shaman, I'll be able to remember where he is in a minute, it might be this one here. Then we've got in core 11 boar boys, 8 goblin wolf riders, and 2 individual goblin chariots. So, the boar boys here, they are big uns, they have vanguard, they have full command, and they have the angry lad's flag, which gives them, does that give them something on the charge? They have cavalry spears as well. The goblin wolf riders, which are in a line there, they are skirmishers, they have feigned flight, and that means they can run away and then just be rallied at the end of it. So one thing I need to look up, actually, I forgot to look up in the rulebook, maybe someone in the chat will know. When an enemy uses feigned flight, they flee and then they rally at the end of it. So if you catch them, do you just complete a charge normally into them, or do you kill them? I would assume that you would just complete a charge normally into them if you catch a unit that feigns flight. But I haven't looked it up, so someone in the chat, get on that. Then we've got 2 Orc Boar Chariots in special. They have Frenzy, and a 7 Orc Boar Boy mob. And they have Frenzy as well, but they don't wear armour because of that, and the 7 unit is back there, so they don't have armour. The one at the front does have armour, but they do not have Frenzy. So those are the 2 choices you have, it seems, with the Orc Boar Boys. Then there is, in rare, there's a Black Orc Boar Chariot as well, which is out on the flank over there somewhere. So, we've got Goblin Chariot, Boar Boys with armour, Wolf Riders, the Shaman on the boar, Black Orc BSB with, who's very powerful, almost as powerful as the Wyvern according to the points. There are some more boars there, the Wyvern on the hill. And you can see my bunker with all the heroes in it. So, they were placed before the Rangers. What I was thinking about with the Rangers was waiting to see where the enemy deployed. If there was a good chance to deploy behind them, maybe I would have taken that, because that would have been interesting. It would have turned them round and maybe shot off some of the boar boys before they get to do anything, which would be good. But I decided in the end, after I'd set up the hammerers like this, I also thought about putting the Rangers down here, but not many of them would have been able to shoot. So I decided I was just going to put them in front and let them get charged, and if anything survives against 29 Rangers, then and manages to beat them, then the hammerers will come in and mop up. That's the plan anyway, we'll see if it works out. So here we go into turn 1, and my opponent gets to go, oh no, I go first. So I'm going to do some shooting immediately, and you can see that not too much has been done. Have any boar boys gone at all? Let's have a look. I don't think so. So you can see that they haven't moved up because they had Vanguard. And there you go. Not much accomplished in the first turn. I don't know if I actually killed anything. The rock throwers didn't hit anything. And the rangers didn't either. So, into the orc turn. And now what you'll recognise immediately here is that this is a weird thing that these wolf riders are doing. No weirder than this stupid line I've got going on. But it does mean that if their Pillar of Fire is successfully cast, And then when it moves next turn, it can just bounce through them and end up all the way over here and bounce through my entire army because it can't stop on a unit. Which is one of the sillier, weirder rules, I think, in there right now. I think it should probably just either rest under a unit. I don't see any harm in it doing that. Or, if it can't complete the move over the unit, either hit them and stop, but it counts as hitting them, or just come out to the side instead. Rather than just travelling the entire way across the battlefield because there's nowhere to rest. It's the same way with fleeing units. When you flee, you bounce through your own units, so you can potentially bounce all the way across the table to the other end. Which I have done with my war machines a few times, and it's very weird and shouldn't be how the game works, I think. So, the Orcs move up. And here goes the Pillar of Fire. I'm not really in range to stop it right now. And this means that it gains about 12 inches on the range of Pillar of Fire. Because if you go to within 18 of the Runesmith, I can shut it down. If you stay way back and just cast it there instead, you can stay an extra 12 inches away and still have it threaten me. And it's going to reach me in one turn, and yep, immediately into my turn it does. Just blasts all the way down there, and it'll do some damage. Hopefully not a huge amount. It does actually do good wounds to the dwarf warriors that were behind, actually. Only one of them left, which is sad. So I moved the Runesmith and the Thane with the handgun into the ranger unit now, so he can lend his shooting support, and I can give them all flaming attacks and armor bane 2, and the Runesmith will give them more magic resistance as well. So I do some shooting, shoot up the BSB chariot, put some wounds on there, kill a boar boy or two, and that's about it. So the shooting, very underwhelming so far, not very much accomplished at all. You can see the wolves, how many were in there at the start? Let's see, was it just the 5? Yes, they've just moved a bit. So, into the Orc turn. And are we going to get combat yet? Well, first of all, we get a Pillar of Fire, which doesn't quite hit both of my big units. And you can see what's dead here. We've got a Ranger, we've got some Dwarf Warriors, and I think the last one is dead as well, actually. It was there, but the Pillar of Fire hit him and the Hammerers and killed him. So there are some points scored there. We've got a comment of just the, so I'm going to refer back to that if we get the rest of the sentence in a moment. Owen says, Rangers look like they're mincemeat with that much lovely Orc cav. Potentially yes, but 1 wound cavalry are in serious danger against Rangers. Because those crossbows, especially now the Runesmith is in there, with armor bane 4, so if I roll any 6s to wound, that's just going to drop a boar boy. So, the Wyvern steams into the action and charges into the Rangers. And another unit charged them as well, as you can see here. And I think it was the Wolf Riders. And I chose to stand and shoot against them and just killed them all. So that's going to help me with the combat res significantly. And this chariot has moved right up to the Rangers, but not charged. These boars are onto the hill ready to charge next turn. So, the thinking behind this, I assume, my opponent does not care about the Wolf Riders. So you send them in, eat the stand and shoot. Don't care about combat res so much on the Wyvern, because even if he flees, the Rangers are not going to catch him anyway. So maybe that's the thinking there, and also getting them tied down in combat, hoping to stay there so the boar boys can then fight them while they're already locked down and can't stand and shoot against them. So maybe that's the plan. The Runesmith declines a challenge from the Wyvern. Well, I decline the challenge and he kicks the Runesmith to the back so I don't get my armor bane anymore. If I accepted with any of my characters, then I would lose the combat, and I want to win the combat instead and make it flee so it can't charge next turn, or just run it down and kill it if it doesn't run far enough. So in the combat, my opponent does kill quite a few Rangers, as you can see the corpse pile here, but I scored loads because I did damage to the Wolf Riders on the way in. I've got a standard bearer, and I did some wounds that were regenerated, so they do count to combat res. So I'm way up there to like 10 combat, or 11 maybe, and my opponent's up to 7. So the Wyvern flees beyond the boar boys, and the Rangers decide to hold rather than pursue, because I thought, I'm not going to catch it, and if I pursue, all that's going to happen is I'm going to crash into this chariot instead. and I would rather shoot something next turn instead of fighting a chariot, because this is my strong shooting unit. You can see they've been whittled down a bit. We have wounded the wyvern though and scared it off for a turn, so that's okay. Martin says the Pillar of Fire should have harmed the wolves as well. It did, I believe. I don't know whether it actually killed any, but I think it may have done. Let me have a look actually. How many were in the list? How many Goblin Wolf Riders? 8 of them, so yeah, I think it killed 3. So, Voidborn Scum says, don't think you can decline the challenge, nowhere to go outside the fighting rank. Well, that's what I thought, but I was corrected at this event because there is kind of still somewhere you can go, because you can go into a back rank. If there's just like a couple of characters fighting each other, you wouldn't be able to decline, because obviously you can't escape. But while there is a unit, you can theoretically form a back rank that isn't in the fighting rank. So I think that is allowed. So that's how I've been playing it now since I was corrected on that. Because I looked at the way it was worded in the rulebook, and it doesn't say that there has to be an existing back rank as far as I could see. So if you can legally get away and start a second rank, then I think that's okay. I don't think the back rank has to technically exist yet for you to then form one by escaping. I'll have a look at the rulebook now actually. This is an interesting time to do some research. I'll tell you how it's worded and how the conclusion was reached at the event that you can actually do it. Because I've not been refusing challenges when in a line before. And I was thinking that maybe if I want to refuse a challenge, I would have to have a couple of models in a back rank first, just so I could leap into the back rank. But I was informed that's not the case. So I'm going to look up challenges and refusing a challenge. Here we go. Page 210 of your Old World rulebooks. Here we go. Let's see, refusing a challenge. So, moves through the ranks to take up a position away from the fighting rank. Cannot make any attacks or have attacks directed against them. Confers no benefits to the unit. The nominated model must immediately retire from combat upon retiring. Nowhere to run. Sometimes they are not part of a unit, or the last model in a unit. They are part of a unit which is engaged in all 4 of its arcs, i.e. a unit is completely surrounded. So, move through the ranks. The way that bit's worded would suggest that there would have to be a back rank. So I'm not 100% sure on it now, but it does seem like the general consensus is that you can create the back rank with the model that's removed from the front rank, because you're not engaged on all sides. So someone let me know what you think in the chat there, whether you think that's the right reading of it, and whether you think we reached the right conclusion at the event there. But this is something that I asked about beforehand, because it was something I was planning to do, because I'm running these super long lines that don't have a back rank. And it was approved, so that is why I'm going to be refusing some challenges at this event. If it's decided actually that's not the case, and you can't do it, then next time we'll do something different, if I run any lines again. See, Voidborn says, playing it right within tournament rules, but I don't think they are reading that right. Can't move through a rank which doesn't exist yet. I can definitely see that reading of it, so I'm going to have to get some more rules consultation on this one, I think. Okay, but if it's a case that you can't, then if you're about to be charged by something evil, then you can stick like one guy in the back rank, and then you can then refuse the challenge and go and join him in the back rank there. Which would be a really weird way of it working, I think. I think that would be quite strange that you have to nudge one person to the back first and then he can say, hey, come and join me, but you can't do that unless he's there. I think that would be weird. So, turn 3 for me. So we don't have to worry about the wyvern right now. It's got to rally first and then come back. So the Pillar of Fire gets through again, does a bit more damage. And the Thane pops out the unit. And if he ever does this, it's because I want to shoot at 2 different targets. And if we look back here, you'll see that the wizard is now quite far away from the boar boys. So I thought, I'll pop the Thane out, shoot the wizard, and then the crossbows will shoot something else. The Thane pops out, rolls a 1 and a 2, and misses with both of his shots. That wizard, I think, only has about 2 wounds. So it didn't need much to kill him. So that is a big swing in the game there, that wizard surviving out in the open. So that's not good. That also means the Thane can now be hit by the Pillar of Fire, which isn't that likely to kill him because he is toughness 5. And I shoot down some of the boar boys on the hill, which is a significant number of them actually. They're now only down to 7. The rock does not do anything this turn from the grudge thrower. And you can see the Pillar of Fire in the next turn. Some charges are declared. So Pillar of Fire goes through the Thane and the Rangers and kills a bit more. Does 1 wound to him, which isn't nice. The boar boys on the hill charge him, and the boar boys on the ground charge the Rangers. Now, I'm not sold on this, because what's going to happen now is that I can stand and shoot with both units. I don't know what the best choice is though. What I'm leaning towards is that the optimal thing to do here is charge both the boar boy units into the Thane. He can't flee, because then you'll be able to redirect the charge into the Rangers and they can't stand and shoot against a redirected charge. So I think the 2 of them into the Thane, and the wolf chariot into the Rangers. And hopefully you survive the few crossbow shots that can actually target you, because a lot of them can't see the chariot. Hopefully you survive that and lock them in combat, so then when you kill the Thane, you then overrun with both these 2 units and get into the Rangers, and everyone could then fight. As it stands, there's 1 charging into each. So they're going to get a stand and shoot from the Thane, they're going to get a stand and shoot from the Rangers. So just a thought there. And you can see after the stand and shoot, one of these guys is dead, and the Rangers kill quite a few of that unit, so barely any of them are actually going to make it in there. 4 they kill. So the Thane is probably going to die now, but I think we can live with that. And let's see, at the end of that turn, you can see that the numbers... hold on. Yeah, there we go. So the Wyvern then moves up to next to them. Let's see, Nicola says, you missed the Thane of Shame trying to shoot me. I did actually mention that a moment ago. So when the Thane popped out the unit, that was to specifically target the Shaman who was hanging out... Where was he? Back here. There he is. Popped out and failed to shoot him at all. So that's why the Thane was out in the open. So the Wyvern is coming up and just hanging out right next to them as well. Waiting to strike. Potentially at a War Machine would be a good target for him. And all the boar boys going in. Let's see how the combat goes. So, oh yeah, before that even, all these chariots, which are in a bit of a traffic jam, have now decided, you know what, we're going to come around this flank. Doomseeker, do your worst. You're only going to take out one of us and then the rest of us will come for you. So the Doomseeker is going to have his chance to charge something now, which is nice. And using this bit of terrain has prevented the enemy from getting a lot of their stuff in where they want, I think. Let's see, yes. So I think that is something to consider, because when you follow up into a combat that's ongoing, but you would have to make sure the combat was ongoing. So it could backfire, because the Wolf Riders, the Wolf Chariot could just get killed by a stand and shoot, and then the Rangers wouldn't be in combat, so you wouldn't be able to fight them this turn. And then you would only be overrunning like an inch to get to them, so you wouldn't even count as charging in the next turn either. But at least you'd avoid their stand and shoot. So, you can see that the boars get totally massacred, and there's 1 each left in each unit. Wes says, do you think they'll errata the unlimited width of units, the long lines that look so daft? Hopefully, because it's stupid. But I think they do need to change some other elements of the rules as well at the same time. Otherwise, it significantly weakens certain units in armies that are already weak. For example, Dwarves, I think. The long line of Rangers is a very strong unit. If suddenly they can only be like 10 wide, suddenly they're just like a crossbow unit on a hill. And they're not very scary in combat, because you get in there, kill 6, and suddenly there's barely any attacks coming back at you. So I think they would need to make a few other changes as well. Because some units, I think, are only good because they can go in a long line right now. So they do need to give infantry more of a role in the game if they're going to stop them going super wide. Now, if you're running something like Iron Breakers, then you wouldn't want it to go wide anyway, because the whole point is to survive with iron breakers. So you don't even care about hitting back with them. If you've got like a killy king on shield bearers who's got a big axe of doom, then you're not too concerned about width with them. So you'd run them more like a traditional looking infantry army, which is what I might try next actually, because I'm going to finish painting my lord on shield bearers soon. So I'm not always going to be running these stupid lines. It's just something you've got to try to see if it is as broken as the world thinks it is. Nuke Man says, Square Hammer had a max of 10 for closed and open order at the Nova Grand Tournament. I wouldn't have a problem with that, but I do think, again, there would have to be some other tweaks, or I would have to run a totally different list, because I don't think hammerers are any good in a thin frontage. Because they'll survive if you stick an unbreakable character in there, but they're so expensive they wouldn't do much if they're not wide. So I think other units would be more fashionable. If you're running without super wide units, then Iron Drakes, small units of Iron Drakes are obviously the way to go, because you can have them be quite a significant unit with just 5 with the Trollhammer Torpedo, so that's quite good. And Iron Breakers and Longbeards and other more durable units. And you can put the killy heroes in the front to do the fighting. So it would just change which units are better. I think it would drastically worsen dwarves if you do bring in that nerf to Linehammer. There's a couple of other armies that can do it well, but most of them don't need to, because the things they're running just don't need to go in lines anyway. Like a Wyvern, you don't need a line of Wyverns. Wolfseal says, I reckon max 10 wide and infantry units fight and or shoots to full effect in the first 2 ranks. Well, wiping out the front rank is an issue, because if you're not wide, you're not striking back. But it is stupid that someone fighting a hammerer there can be struck by the guy at this end. It is ridiculous rules writing, and they should have foreseen that this was an optimal way to play certain units. So they should change it, yes. D6 Wounds says, if you restrict Linehammer, then you nerf single attack infantry, and in this edition they need all help they can get. Yes, exactly. So they make the game look stupid, but they're the one unit you want to see represented more on the table, because if you open up the pages of a White Dwarf magazine or a rule book or an army book, the battles you see are going to be massive hordes of infantry fighting against each other with dragons swooping overhead, knights coming in from the flank, and a stone being thrown from a catapult over the top of everybody. And I don't think you would see that kind of game ever if they nerf Linehammer. You rarely see it now, as is, because those kind of armies just aren't efficient in the current rules. So I think they should engineer the rules so it matches up with the depictions of battles that they show us in dioramas and their setup photography battles. And if you want to do that, you've got to make blocks of infantry better, give them more of a role in the game. Whether that's... You could do it entirely by changing the scoring of the game. Stop it being all about kills, and have it based on something else that infantry are good at, such as controlling areas, which blocks of infantry could do well, because they've got a lot of unit strength if you take a lot of bodies. But that isn't the way the game is scored at the moment, so I don't think you need to change infantry much at all, just totally overhaul the scoring system for the game, and I think that fixes infantry on its own. Turn 4 for me. So the Pillar of Fire is dancing around and messing with me again, and does a little bit more damage. The Rangers are not going to charge anyone. They're going to try and shoot this pig that's running away, so I can get some victory points for it. And the Grudge Throwers are going to try and land on this pig here, so I can get the points for that. And the Doomseeker charges in to the chariot there, gets it down to 1 wound, and then dies, and doesn't quite kill it with his death blow, which is sad. So the chariot made it save on the death blow. Otherwise, it would have taken it down with him, which is the dream for a Doomseeker. Dying, so you're not giving away points, and also killing something first, so you're getting really good value in that instance. But it's still alive on 1 wound. But it did have to overrun. So I'm not sure if it has Frenzy, or it might have just failed its test, but it ended up having to overrun into the side of the terrain. But I think it was then allowed to turn around, so it might be able to just charge straight past it to the Grudge Thrower next. So I kill the 1 boar there. I don't land the rocks on anything, and that's very sad. So this guy's still alive and fleeing, so he's probably going to keep running. And because this is Mountain Pass, he's physically not going to be able to reach the edge of the table that he can actually flee from until the end, because he'll run into the side of the table first, and then you can't run off the edge. So he's just going to make his way down the side of the table then, once he hits the edge. So, turn 4 for the Orcs. The Pillar of Fire again. You can see, by the way, the Hammerers have been changing their frontage now, because I actually want to start moving and maybe get out there and kill things, and this extra wide wasn't doing me any favours at this point in the game. So they've gone a little bit narrower, and the Grudge Thrower flees from the chariot that tried to charge it and just about made it away. You can see the distance there, because if it dies, all it does is let this unit then overrun into the next chariot, into the next Grudge Thrower, should I say. So if you flee, if you don't die from fleeing, of course, then it's stood there and I'm not dead. So I can't shoot next turn, but I'm alive, and that's the important thing, because I'm making sure this one can shoot next turn. The other chariots just line themselves up ready to strike in the next turn. So at this point I have a dilemma. The Rangers could well die. There's a chariot looking at them. There are spells that can be cast on them. So I'm in a position where I'm thinking I'm just going to kind of write off the Rangers now, because there's not enough of them left. They've kind of done their job. They've killed some pigs, and I'm just going to leave them to it. If I keep the Hammerers facing this way as backup, or move them up behind the Rangers, I don't think the Wyvern would care about that at all. The Wyvern would charge in, chariot go in, kill them, and then if I then try to charge the Wyvern, it will just flee, and flee much further than I can charge. Very likely, so I'm very unlikely to catch it. So I don't think there's any point even protecting the Rangers anymore, because it would be ineffective. And it's making me think that this big Hammerer block, this Hammerer Death Star, is not quite as good without a gyrocopter. Because if I had a gyrocopter right here as well, and I had the Hammerers and the copter behind the Rangers, the Wyvern charging in there, if it kills them, would then get charged by the Hammerers and a gyrocopter. If you then flee from a gyro, there's a high chance it's going to catch you. So you can't afford to flee from the Hammerers anymore, because the gyrocopter will just run you down. So I think that is a really important part of this unit. If you're going to take the ultimate Death Star that the enemy is never going to hold a charge against, they're always going to flee. Unless there's some deterrent to fleeing, and that's what the gyrocopter is. So I think that is a very important part of this situation here, because they're not fast enough to make it into combat on their own. So that's what I'm missing at the moment. Ian says, I think there needs to be a boost to infantry to get rid of the Linehammer too. I was playing around with thoughts around saying something like... Furious Phil says, would a cart also work? The cart would give the Hammerers extra movement for their charge, but it's only an extra inch. The cart is quite fast as well though, speed, movement 6. So the cart is like a much toned down version of what the gyrocopter would be used for, because it also doesn't have swift stride that the copter does. So anyone running from Hammerers and a copter, the gyrocopter is movement 9, and it's got swift stride. So you're looking probably at least a 15-inch move on the gyrocopter chasing after you, which is quite tricky to avoid. Colonel says, are they dwarf line hammerers? They were, and now they've gone into 2 lines. Ian continues, base contact required to attack, but ranked regular heavy infantry can have double their current rank bonus attacking on top. Some kind of interesting situation with Step Up. Yeah, I think Step Up on its own has been too good in the past. I think it made great weapon units horribly overpowered in 8th edition. You just always took units with great weapons, because it didn't matter if the front rank got wiped out, you still get to fight with your great weapons. So, and then in older editions, great weapons were rarely chosen, at least I didn't see them, because the front rank would just get wiped out and you couldn't then strike, which is the same way it is now, except now you can go super wide, so great weapons are fashionable on the basis that you can go 30 wide and lose 5 guys and hit back with 25 attacks. That's why great weapons are good now. If you can't go wide, then great weapons, I think, fall out of favour again, probably. At least on units that aren't going to be getting the charge in. Hammerers are fine, because you can get extra initiative on them when they get charged, and you can put all the banners on them so the enemy don't get initiative bonuses. But Rangers with great weapons, I don't think that would be very good anymore. Ian says, maybe limit Step Up to rank bonus. I don't know, we might be getting too complicated. There might be something simpler that could be done to fix it. But these should be things that they're discussing in the GW basement somewhere. The little corner they have for the old world team should be furiously with a big whiteboard, writing ideas up on there, a big ideas board, and shooting down each other's ideas. And then as someone, like the cartoon, as soon as someone has a good idea, you just propel them out the window, obviously. So turn 5 for me. At this point, the pillar of fire is still just hanging out between my units. I turn round the hammerers, because while the wyvern would be able to escape from me charging them, the chariots are far less likely to be able to. If they want to attack my grudge throwers, I'm going to charge them, and if they flee, they'd probably go off the table. So if I could succeed with my charges here, I could maybe get to fight them. So that's the plan, and if anything wants to charge me in the flank, Ungrim could fight his way into the fighting rank and punch them in the face. So I'm ignoring the rangers now because I think they're going to die anyway if they get hit by everything and magic spells. There's not that many of them left to survive now, but the hammerers will live. And that's my entire turn. Nothing much happens. I don't do any damage with my crossbows. I think I tried to shoot the wizard who was partially hidden behind the wyvern because he would be some good points if I could get him. I already failed to kill him with the Thane once, and now the rangers didn't do a good job hitting him this time. There is a wyvern in the way, so you can understand why. Turn 5, and the final Orc Boar Boy is going to keep fleeing along the edge of the table because he can't run off this side because it's Mountain Pass, so that's going to deny me loads of points. The Grudge Thrower lands a direct hit on the wyvern's head, and what do you think the wound roll is? I'll give you a clue. The orange arrow is pointing at it now. That's right, direct hit on a wyvern's head, roll a 1 to wound. Classic stone thrower behaviour. Yes, that was taken from my previous turn, by the way. I only just took the picture of it because I just remembered to. The wyvern does get into my rangers this turn and survives their stand and shoot. Chariot into the back of them. 2 chariots into the stone thrower there. D6 wound says an obvious fix for infantry would be to move the supporting attacks back to the second rank instead of on the sides. That would definitely help matters, I think. That would be one quite elegant way of doing it. I think if you combine that with a change in the scoring system, infantry could become quite interesting again. Okay, so Grudge Thrower dead, but the chariots, one of them actually overruns off the table, which means it's safe. We did have to double check the rules to make sure that things off the table at the end of the game didn't count as dead at this stage. Phil says, maybe change the rank bonus for combat resolution, double the rank bonus perhaps. Rank bonus in combat resolution, when you're talking about iron breakers, it's already good. When you're talking about hammerers, you don't want the combat resolution because you would rather attack with 20 hammerers rather than have +3 to combat res. So it depends on the unit how much they care about combat resolution. So if you got even more for combat res, that could help if you get more for being ranked up. Or if you are super wide, then I don't know whether you should get negatives. I don't think we want to be going down that route. We want to be making them better, not worse in other situations. So yeah, tweaks to rank bonus could be a way of doing it as well. The Rangers take some casualties against the Wyvern, and they don't die. Which also means that I don't think I could have got a charge in on the Wyvern with the Hammerers, even if I was narrower, because the Rangers are going to be in the way. But they do actually kill the Goblin Chariot. So my Grudge Thrower misfires this turn and just can't shoot this turn. And the Hammerers, let's see. So when the Hammerers attempted a charge, I think on a Chariot, they did not make it. So let's have a look. Where were the Hammerers? There they were. So I charged into this Chariot here because I wouldn't have to align to it. I would just make the charge, touch, and then align as much as possible. So I'd end up like touching the Grudge Thrower there. So I'd still be touching the Chariot, which would undoubtedly be enough with all these Hammerers to kill it. And it couldn't afford to flee, because that would have meant that it would go straight off the table on one of the ends that it can actually leave the table. So I charged, I think, but didn't go very far. So now the enemy turn 6. Chariot into the Hammerers, which is risky because they could just get themselves killed and they're not going to break the Hammerers. You want to just kill enough of them to score some points, so I understand the logic behind it. And the Wyvern finishes off the Rangers this turn. Chariots kill the Grudge Thrower. And Ungrim is going to try and punch a Chariot in the face. The last pig is still running away. Ungrim kills a chariot, a few hammerers get killed, and that's going to be the end of the game. So, what is the final score in this one? Let me pull the game up here. So, I've lost a decent amount, but the hammerers are still alive and most of the heroes. So, my opponent has destroyed 1,046 points when you factor in the banner for the rangers as well, and the Thane with the gun who died. And I think the runesmith was in the rangers when they died as well. So, I managed to kill 805 points with the units I got. So, if I got the other points for killing one more boar rider, I think maybe it turns it into a draw. That's entirely possible. And let's see, if my Thane had shot off this wizard as well when he popped out the unit to take the shot at him, that would probably also turn it into a draw. So 11-9 loss again, and that seems to be the standard, because it's very difficult to shift both my mega units that have got expensive heroes hiding in them. There are a few not very spicy dice rolls in this game when trying to take risks, like the Thane popping out and not hitting the wizard, which then led to him getting killed. The orcs, I think the boar boys are a really juicy target for rangers. They're 1 wound each, and I think that's the kind of thing they want to see on the table. You're paying a lot of points for that 1 wound, so every one I kill is actually significant. So I think the boar boys were always going to struggle in this matchup a bit, and only one of them survived, which did deny me some points. The chariots are good though, because they're toughness 5 usually a chariot, especially the orc ones, so it's harder to wound them. And they don't get weaker as they take damage, unlike cavalry where you're losing models actively. If a chariot is still alive with a wound, it's still a threat, and then you get in and you can do your impact hits. So they're quite good against the rangers. Would I have been better off just putting a long line of hammerers in front and hiding the rangers behind? I don't know. I think the enemy would have just pillar-fired me and hoped to kill something by the end of the game and just hidden, maybe. Well, I don't think my opponent would have done that, actually, because I think my opponent wanted to be quite orky and get up there and fight. But I don't think I would have wanted that kind of game where everything's just hiding and I'm barely able to shoot. So I think the rangers were always going to be attacked by something. And they did a decent job, actually, in this game. They held off a wyvern, they beat it in combat. They killed wolf riders, they killed a load of boars, so I think they did fine. This list is kind of doing its job, but against certain lists that can outmaneuver me, because I'm not full-on corner camping, then you can get into the juicy stuff that's easier to kill, which is usually only enough for a very narrow win, if any, though. So, I think the list's doing alright. I just need to, if I'm going to tweak it going forward, maybe just tweak the support units if I want to try this kind of thing again. I might not, because it does look silly on the table, all these big lines. So, into round 3. Let's see, Phil says, if the chariots ran first into rangers and only later the boars, would that have helped the orcs? Yes. If you send a chariot in first and the boars avoid the stand and shoot, because they are the most vulnerable to the shooting, so the chariots definitely want to go in first. But the problem with that is that the chariots may well not survive the combat, so then you haven't locked them down at all. Yeah, you could send all the chariots in, I can only stand and shoot against one of them. And if you're charging from quite close as well, then I wouldn't be able to stand and shoot against or with that many models, because a lot of them wouldn't be able to see you. D6 Wound says, thanks for doing the report so quickly. I'm currently painting rangers, so I was keen to see how they did. They are a good unit. I was talking to some of the dwarf fanatics at the event, and they were saying rangers, they're not actually great, but they seem really good because the other dwarf options just aren't good. The other core options are not particularly amazing. The Royal Clan Warriors are quite good, Longbeards are okay, but for the most part, I think Rangers are the standout, even though they're not. If you just look purely at their stat line, they've got good ballistic skill, only strength 3, so strength 5 with the great weapons, but that means you're initiative 1. You're never going to get the charge, because you're standing there shooting, so you're always going to get charged, you're going to get hit first. You have to run them in a super wide line. You can get multi-charged then, and lose a lot of them. So I don't think they're a great unit. I think they're just good in the dwarf list, because the other options aren't great either right now. I think the dwarves would massively benefit, obviously, to any sweeping changes to infantry in the game, because the entire army is infantry. Apart from gyrocopters and war machines, everything is infantry. So, changes to infantry would greatly benefit them. So, what are we up against here? We're up against the verminous, horrible, filthy, disgusting, slimy Skaven. Let's pull up the list, shall we? We've got... You can see these weird shapes going on, so I'll explain what's happening there, because I did ask my opponent about these weird U shapes. And let's have a look at everything. So, we've got a Grey Seer, level 4, with Battle Magic, and the Ruby Ring of Ruin. There is a Grey Seer with Lore Familiar and Demonology, who is also a level 4. So 2 level 4s who are hanging out in the same unit of Gutter Runners back there. And I think they're all called Gutter Runners. Yeah, they are. So, with Demonology, they can potentially be flying around 24 inches and then throwing poison attacks at you. So that's the combo there. You've got 2 wizards in the unit. Close Order says, what a lovely army, it must have been made by a very smart and handsome man. Well, Close Order, I was actually about to shout you out, actually, because this is one of the, like, 18 different YouTube people that were at the event. That is who this Skaven army belongs to. So, Mr. Close Order there. What was your channel called before? Was it 6 Plus or something? But now it's Close Order. So, change the name, but the same sizzling rat content, I imagine. I assume it's going to be wall-to-wall rat videos from here on out. So, let's have a look at this rest of the army. So, after the level 4s, we have got a... Yeah, that's right. Old World 6++ it was. I can understand why he changed it. That's not the catchiest name. Skaven Chieftain with Halberd, Heavy Armour, Battle Standard Bearer, and he is around somewhere, but they're all rats, so good luck figuring out which one's the BSB. He might be behind there, actually. Maybe that's why I can't see him. Then Core, there are 2 units of 20 clan rats, and they have Rattling guns attached to them, which is a really good upgrade. So, let's see. So the Rattling guns are like mini organ guns, essentially, which means it's 18-inch range, and then they fire 2 artillery dice. And anytime you've got a war machine that fires 2 artillery dice, you should be rubbing your hands thinking, yes, I'm very rarely going to explode. Because first of all, you have to roll 2 misfires together, and then you still generally have to roll on a table as well. So most likely you're not blowing up if you're rolling 2 artillery dice. Usually. If you roll 1, you're usually -1 to hit. I think it's the same for the volley gun as well. Organ gun also. So they're attached to the unit, kind of. So they're part of the unit, but they're not part of the unit. Man-sized rats, preposterous. Yes, Martin, it is outrageous. I refuse to believe that man-sized rats exist. I'm just going to totally gloss over this entire game. We've got 10 giant rats, and 3 rat swarms. So there are the rats with the pack masters leading them around, pushing these giant rats around. And the swarms are in there somewhere. There they are. Skirmishing rat swarms. And these are more gutter runners. So these ones aren't quite scary because they're not joined by 2 level 4 wizards. And the unit of 20 is actually 347 points. And the 2 wizards are 305 and 245 Grey Seers. So that's a very expensive unit up here. So if they don't get to do their work very well, that's greatly going to diminish the output of the army, isn't it? The other ones can scout though. So what I did, if we look at deployment, to prevent them scouting anywhere too nasty, I've put the Dwarf Warrior unit down here, and I put my Doomseeker all the way out there. I don't want them starting off next to my war machines and just lobbing poison knives at them. Throwing a poisonous knife into the metal hull of a war machine, which for some reason wounds it with poison. So that's something that maybe I would change as well, actually, in the game. Maybe stop war machines being affected by poison. How about that? Anyone get behind that? What else do we need to change while we're at it? Oh yeah, flaming attacks should just cancel all regeneration, not just flammable regeneration. Let's start that petition now as well. So what's my strategy here? I've got a hill, so I'm going to put the rangers on it. Because these rats are going to be zapping all over the place, throwing poison at me. So I'm going to stay nice and compact, screening out the war machines a bit so the enemy can't start off too close to them. I've got my rangers on the hill behind the hammerers who can just step down off the hill in the first turn and the rangers start shooting over the top of them. All the heroes, I think, are in the hammerers, except the runesmith, who wasn't sure where he was going to go yet. So he's just hanging out down there for now. And then he's going to pop into the rangers, probably. It's not going to help too much, because the rats don't really wear much armour. So Armour Bane 4 would be slightly overkill against the rat scum. And I don't feel bad calling them that. So there's the Doomseeker out there on his own, looking down at the cheapest enemy unit, which is these rats. I think they're the cheapest. Let's have a look. Are they cheaper than the rat swarms? Yes, they are. They're lower than half the cost of the rat swarms, actually. So the reason for these U-shapes, I was asking my opponent, and it was so that all of them can draw line of sight to the units they want to shoot. So this one can, as long as part of your base can see out, then you're alright. Because in the old world, you don't draw line of sight from your entire base, it's just part of your base. So if part of your base can get a full view of the enemy unit, then you're all good. So that's why they've got these weird pincer shapes going on. So they can all see, and they're not taking up a huge footprint, so they don't have to go in a line, because they are skirmishing. So, rattling guns. Terrifying. Cinematic shot over the shoulder of my magnificent dwarves. And I'm going first. So the Doomseeker immediately going straight towards the enemy, as he should. Hammerers down off the hill. The Thane with a handgun stays on the hill, and he's going to start blasting at one unit, and the Rangers are going to shoot another. So, I haven't gone super wide with the Rangers, even off the side of the hill, because there are no large targets in the opposing army, so until some Hammerers die, then the guys down here wouldn't be able to shoot anyway. So, we're just going to be firing in 2 ranks at the moment. The Runesmith popped in there for protection, to give them magic resistance. And some of the rats have, is it called Evade? The ability where if you shoot them, they can choose to just fall back in good order, with Swift Stride if they have it. So potentially they can just run away really fast if you shoot at them. So if they're on the edge of your range and you declare the shot, then it's not like charging where you can redirect it into another unit, you just lose all the shots. Which I think is very powerful as well. I think shooting's weak enough already in this game, so that doesn't need to be a thing. I think you should be able to do a leadership test to redirect your shooting attack if your enemy moves out of range of it. I think that would be reasonable. I don't think that would be too wild. Of course, if they retreat to long range, they make it more difficult, so it's still a powerful ability. It would still be worth using to get to long range. So you can see these guys have moved away when targeted. And not much done yet. I've killed a few clan rats in the middle. I think the leader, the general, is it the general or is it a BSB? I think it might be the BSB is in one of the units. I think. Or is it the BSB and one of the Grey Seers in these guys here? And one of the level 4s is in this unit. I think that's right. I think the level 4 is in here. And the one with Demonology is in there with the BSB. There we go. So there's the general hiding in there. So I've been shooting at his unit. Turn 1 for the Rattos. And Oaken Shield on the general's unit to give them a ward save. And Demonic Vessel, which makes these guys better at killing stuff. And rats walking towards a Doomseeker. This sounds like a fight I want to get into. And of course a close-up of the butt. This is not the natural Battle for Skull Pass dwarf butt. This has been enhanced. Okay, rats in front of the hammerers. And let's see, Ian says, I didn't realise Evasive would combo with Swift Stride. Apparently yes. So this unit here, if I wanted to charge them with hammerers, that would get me closer to the enemy, in theory. However, looking at it strategically, does it benefit the hammerers at all to be in a long line like this? Because who am I looking at? Gutter runners. Gutter runners who can move, fly 24 inches potentially if they get their spell off. Those units are not going to stick around and I'm never going to catch them. So, if anything, I want to be facing that way towards the slower units that I will actually be allowed to fight at some point during the game. So, I think charging that unit might be a bad idea, so probably not going to try that. And they may well flee anyway, which would be in like that sort of direction, which would definitely lead me miles away from where I want to go. So, this unit actually fails to get the spell off that propels them through the air 24 inches, so they're kind of stuck there for a turn, which is good. It gives me a little bit of breathing room. And a bit of shooting into the hammerers with the rattling guns. If anyone's played Vermintide, I've played that quite a lot on PC, and the rattling guns are very annoying there. So turn 2 for me. The Runesmith pops out of the unit of Rangers because I don't need it for the Armor Bane, so he's actually making his way forward. And he wants to get in range to try and stop some spells, you see, if the enemy come closer with the spellcasters. The Thane is still outside the unit, so I can shoot. He is blocking a little bit, just a few of the Rangers, but not much. Grudge Thrower lands and kills a lot of the General's unit. The other one misfires, but it'll be fine. Mr. Big Butts, the Doomseeker, charged into the rats, killed a couple of them, and then pursued them, but they ran away very fast. But hopefully they don't come back because they're rats, and they don't have the best leadership. These dwarf warriors are just slowly working their way around the tower in case they need to cut off a retreat of the gutter runners, but I wouldn't put any money on that happening. And in the enemy turn, the rats rally again and turn around to face the Doomseeker. These rats are making their way towards the Grudge Thrower. And can I really justify shooting at giant rats when there are gutter runners around that I could shoot at? Because the gutter runners will move away, so they're not my favourite target. But I've been mostly shooting at the clan rats. But in this turn, the general, the Grey Seer, leaves the unit of 5 and goes into the unit of 20. So, pops out one bunker into another. So if you're running Skaven, that seems to be a good move, to have multiple units of clan rats that you can bounce between when one unit gets too damaged. And as the old world rules pretty much force you to do, when you're down to just a few models, don't give up their points, just move and hide behind a hill. It's a sad state of affairs that the game is written that way, but it is. So you have to preserve your points. And this time, the gutter runners get right in front of the hammerers, and they're going to start throwing their poisonous attacks at me. And they do have Demonic Vessel on them, so let's see what they can do. With the rattling guns as well, and other gutter runners out here, so the hammerers are getting whittled down. You can see there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So we're down 8 hammerers already, and then another 3 drop. So sometimes when I'm taking away hammerers, I lose track of where the centre of the unit is, because I've got so many heroes in there. Then the centre is supposed to be the standard bearer. So this should be taken off evenly on both sides. Now, charging into gutter runners I think would be a horrendous idea, because I think, do they have fire and flee, the gutter runners? Probably. So I think that would be a bad idea. So I would not catch them. So this is another situation where having a gyrocopter, if it was alive at this point in the game, would be helpful, because if you want to charge a unit, send a gyro in, the enemy can't do anything that involves fleeing. However, what I did ask earlier, no one had an answer yet, so I could just look it up myself. Feigned flight, when a unit flees and then instantly rallies at the end of it, does that mean that if you catch them, you just complete the charge and start fighting them normally, or do you mow them down? Someone let me know, or you're going to force me to do more on-air research. So, in my turn 3, the Doomseeker kills the rats. Kills a few of them, they fail their test, run off the table. So he's done his job, he's got almost his points back, he now needs to go and seek his death elsewhere. The Rangers and the Thane blast away, and I kill a few of the gutter runners with the Thane. He's the ideal target for shooting. They're an ideal target for him because no one else wants to shoot them, because I think they're -2 to hit for some reason. Because they're skirmishers and they have something else on them as well. Maybe they're just extra smelly because they've been in the sewers. But he doesn't suffer any negative modifiers on his handgun, so he kills a few, which is good. See, so Ian says, rallies automatically at the end of its move. Yes, but is there something written in there that says, but if they get caught, they still die? Okay, that was my assumption, that they would just fight normally. There's no exception put in there. So we drop a rock on some rats. Doesn't kill too many of them though. And with the new larger bases and the way that partial hits work at the moment, template weapons not as good as they were back in the day. Okay, so with Oaken Shield on them as well, they have got a ward save, so that is going to help them against shooting. And the Hammerers are not charging anyone yet. And in fact, what I should be doing at this point is just marching the Hammerers towards the slower enemy units. But the way I'm looking at it is, I don't think I'm going to catch anything. Anything I walk towards can just walk away from me faster than I can walk towards them. So I don't think I'm going to catch anyone I move towards. And I'd just be dividing up my forces then. So I'm kind of just staying here and hoping I can ride out the shooting for the rest of the game. Rat swarms into the Grudge Thrower. But because they don't make it a very high charge roll, only one of them can touch at the moment. And the rats are going to unleash their mighty poisoned attacks again and kill even more Hammerers. And then even more. So all the Hammerers are gone. We're down to 3 individual heroes now. Who, after conferring, they do become their own units immediately as soon as the unit is gone from around them. So, any more shooting attacks would now be able to pick which of their 3 heroes they want. Which has pluses and negatives, because obviously they're skirmishers now on their own, so they're going to be -1 to hit. But they also can be specifically picked out, and the vulnerable one is the Runesmith, because he's the only one now that doesn't have a ward save. But he's also quite cheap compared to Ungrim. So, okay, the Grudge Thrower beats the Rat Swarms in combat, but can't pursue, so it's just going to stay there so it can shoot. And into my turn 4. So what we're going to do with this situation here. I could move all my heroes back into my rangers and preserve the points. However, because I've already lost 2 games, I'm now fully aware that I'm not going to win the tournament. So margin of victory isn't that big of a deal anymore. It could be the difference between me finishing like 7th or 14th if it goes alright for the rest of the weekend. So is that really a big deal? No. So we're going to do a fun thing now that is not optimal at all. Ungrim is not going to go back into the unit. He's going to run off and try and hunt Skaven on his own. Because I'm definitely going to have a small loss. So it would only turn into a medium loss if he gets killed. And it's not a big deal anymore because I'm not going to win the event. So everyone else is going to go back into the unit so they don't get killed because they're not going to successfully chase anyone down. And Ungrim is just going to chase rats. So he's going to go in this sort of direction towards the things that aren't very fast, like the Rattling Gun, and see if he eventually reaches the enemy. So here we go. Making his way towards the enemy. He attempts, I think he might attempt to charge, but the enemy would flee, obviously, which they do, and he doesn't quite catch them. The Thane decides not to go back in the unit yet because he wants to shoot at a different target, so I can kill 2 different things then. So, with my shooting, I take out a few more gutter runners. And not much else this turn. Shooting not being very successful at this event for me so far. Doomseeker as well making its way back into the action. Turn 4 for the rats, so more charges into the Grudge Thrower again, which didn't do anything significant last turn. And don't look at the fact that I'm using Cannon Crew with the Grudge Thrower here, because I was painting this and the Thane the night before the event. Because I totally forgot I'd signed up for the event until I got an email reminding me about it on the Wednesday. So I was furiously painting the rest of the list I was going to have ready for the next event, to have it ready in time for this one. So it's a Grudge Thrower, and you can see I didn't even flock inside the machine there, because I didn't have time. It was past 2 in the morning, and I thought, do I want to weave a paintbrush coated in PVA glue around, through the bits of the war machines, get to every crevice under there, and then pour flock in, or do I just go to sleep and no one will notice anyway? And no one noticed anything was amiss about these units, unless I pointed it out. So, moving on. Dramatic zoom action there. So, that fight's going on. 2 rats in combat now. What's this? Is this a dead Ungrim? It certainly is. So everyone shoots at him, and he dies. So his mission did not quite go to plan. Although you can see I did shoot out the Rattling Gun with my Thane last turn, so I think that was the significant kill there. And there we go, Ungrim gets shot down. So it is going to creep up the margin of victory for the rats a little bit, but it wasn't going to change the result. Then the Grudge Thrower, in combat, fights to a draw with the Rat Swarms, because it's not that easy to wound the Dwarf War Machine crew if you're a rat, it turns out. Turn 5 for me, so the Rangers start blasting again. Do they kill anyone? Well, those are the failed hit rolls. Those are the failed wound rolls. 2 successful wound rolls means not a lot of dead rats. So you can tell it's a really bad round of dice when I'm taking photos of them. So they would have been hitting on 4s and then wounding on 3s. So only 2 got through. Wow, wow, wow. So very little accomplished that turn. And we get another draw in combat here, I think. Turn 5 for the rats. So more rats into the machine. If these rats can't do it, then giant rats surely can, because they're the same but bigger. So they're going to have bigger teeth that are going to just gnaw at that metal war machine, get into the rivets and everything, and it'll just fall apart. Or you could just attack the crew. So they're running away from the Doomseeker, these clan rats, which is probably a good idea, because if he gets in there, he could easily kill a Grey Seer if he gets into contact with him. And I don't know if there's is there a clan rat champion in there who could issue a challenge on his behalf? So I wouldn't be able to refuse, but then I could just win the combat resolution test against them, and they could flee and I could cut them down. So yeah, probably a good idea running away from him. But these guys aren't scared. These gutter runners. So the other ones are trying to shoot down my unit of 5 dwarves that were trying to cut off their escape, and they don't even need to escape at this stage. Combat here rages on, and the grudge thrower is killed by just an endless tide of vermin. Turn 6 for the dwarves. The Doomseeker goes into the gutter runners. My opponent did not stand and shoot. And I thought for a moment, what, is this, he's just being nice because I did the fun, fluffy thing with Ungrim and chased him down instead of hiding? Just stays there to fight a Doomseeker? But no, apparently there was some logic behind it. And that was, that if you flee from the Doomseeker, because it's turn 6, they might not rally, you never know. They might just horribly fail their flee and not go very far and get caught. Could theoretically happen. They might not rally, so they would be then fleeing at the end of the game. And if you stand and shoot, you might kill the Doomseeker, which costs you 50 points. So you stand there and hope that he fails his charge, or if he does make it, you hope that he doesn't kill you or you don't kill him. And then it's just a bit of a stalemate in combat. And then if you have to flee from him because you lose the combat, you're faster than him anyway, so you should get away. And, oh, what's this? This is some more bad dice rolling. What could this mean? So, a big pile of 1s, 2s, 3s and 4s there. So that would be the Rangers. Who were they shooting at, though? I don't remember. Maybe shooting at the gutter runners, so they would have been hitting them on 5s because they are skirmishers. So all those missed, and that one failed to wound, so I got 2 wounds through again. So the Rangers not really performing very well with their shooting duties at the moment. And what's this? A Doomseeker and no gutter runners. So he did his impact hits, he did his attacks, killed a few of them. They didn't do anything to him. They failed their leadership, fled 9 inches away, I think. So he needs to, or they may have fled 10 inches away, so I needed to get an 11 on the dice to catch them. And he rolled an 11. So the Doomseeker cuts down the gutter runners. Whole unit dead. So I've got my Ranger Death Star dead with the BSB and the Runesmith and the Thane with a handgun in it. Ungrim got himself killed for comedy reasons, because it was already a lost cause. And we've got Bad Squiddo in the chat. Good evening. I've heard some raucous Bad Squiddo laughter from downstairs this evening, so I assume there's something hilarious being watched down there. There is obviously Annie of Bad Squiddo, and the matriarch of the Squiddo clan is downstairs as well. Okay, so the final result for this game. Let me pull that up now, see how many points we killed. So, the Dwarves only destroyed 377 points. So I got some gutter runners. I got... Who else did I wipe out? I must have killed something to get 377 points. But not much anyway. So I didn't kill a lot. And my opponent got 1,003 points. Because obviously there's a lot of points here. Expensive heroes and a massive unit of rangers. And then the Doomseeker, who was alive at the end, so you do actually score for him. Because he survived. So that gets 50. But my BSB is alive. My general died, so there's a bonus for that. And that turns it into a 13-7 loss. So if Ungrim hadn't got himself killed horribly, then it, as it should have been, if I was competing for the top tables and I wanted to maximise my score to try and get the best possible differential later on, then Ungrim would just retreat into this unit and nothing was going to wipe all them out by the end of the game. So he would have been okay in there, and it would have just been another 11-9 loss. So it seems like this list is really good at doing 11-9 losses. So let's go into day 2 and round 4 and hope that we get something that either is more favourable or I get some better shooting in. Ed says, just made it in time to hear about the glorious and totally futile charge of the Pig Brigade. Well, the Pig Brigade is right here. It's a brigade and it's full of pigs and it's against 2 ridiculously long lines of dwarves. GW, give us some better rules. Come on, this is stupid. Look at this. It's 2 long lines of dwarves. No one wants to do that. I'm trying to prove a point here. So, let's have a look at the list for the Orcs and Goblins, which is another Nomadic Waaagh, but it's different to the one that I played in the previous day. So we've got level 4 on a wolf. There are 2 wolves inside you. One of them is a level 4, one of them is a level 4. They're both level 4s. Both the wolves inside you are level 4 wizards. One of them has Waaagh magic, and the other one has Waaagh magic, so we're going to see multiple feet of Gork, potentially. One of them's got Ruby Ring of Ruin, and there you go. There's an Orc Big Boss as well, on a boar, with the Banner of Butchery and Trollhide Trousers and Charmed Shield, for that nice multi-save combo. And then there's an Orc War Boss on a Wyvern. It's not a Black Orc though, just a regular Orc War Boss, with Trollhide Trousers, Grizzly Trophy Rack, and Talisman of Protection. So some nice saves going on there. Let's have a look at the close-ups of them. So we've got boars as well, and we've got wolf riders. So we've got 5 wolf riders, we've got 19 boar boys. So there's a big blob of boar boys there. We've got another 10 there, which are in special. These are the frenzy ones that, I think these ones don't wear armour. And the 19 boar boys, I think those ones do have armour. Yeah, they've got heavy armour. So the big unit has armour, the small unit has frenzy. There are some wolf riders. And some more boars as well. We've got another unit of 10, and these ones are also armoured. So the one in the middle has no armour. These ones do. And these ones do. Then there's the Wyvern. So it's lots of cavalry. So most of my dwarf lists love facing cavalry. Anything that you're taking like organ guns or iron drakes are really good against cavalry because they've got good, decent range. You're going to get at least a shot in against them, or in the case of iron drakes, you get stand and shoot usually as well. High strength shooting. All the dwarf shooting is at least strength 4, which you want. And all these 1 wound models, you've generally got good AP on the dwarf weapons as well, especially with Armour Bane if you've got Runesmith nearby in the unit. So our knights and cavalry are usually what I like to see, although it is fast, so it can get to you quick. So if you don't kill them with shooting, it will eat you, potentially. So there's the back of Ungrim, and over the top of the Grudge Thrower. My turn. So before we get into my first turn, let's look at the quick overview again and see what my strategy is. So it's a risk putting rangers touching the edge of the table. If anything charges them slightly off centre and they have to fall back in good order or give ground. Actually, I don't know about give ground. Do you just give ground directly backwards, regardless of the enemy's facing? But at least if you fall back in good order, they would be straight off the table. If anything charges them here and lives, and they lose, straight off the table. So it's a risk, but my risk, I think, is mitigated by the fact the hammerers are slightly overlapping the front of them. So I think most units would want to attack them on this side, away from the hammerer blob. The hammerers have the Thane with a handgun in there, so that you can target something different to the Rangers. They've got the BSB and Ungrim in there. And then the Rangers have got the Runesmith on the end. It doesn't matter if his line of sight's blocks, because he doesn't have a crossbow anyway. And then everyone else can shoot at the heavily armoured massive unit of Boar Boys with Armour Bane 4, which is the dream. Grudge Throwers don't need line of sight if they're going to target the Wyvern, which they probably are, because it's a large target, so they'll be able to shoot that anyway, so this one behind my lines isn't an issue. But again, it's another game where I'm not putting the Rangers out forward, because the enemy are so fast, and out on their own, a few of these units charge into them, they just die, and then they're not supported. So trying to support my units, and you can see that it's a totally ridiculous looking army, this. And I don't think I'm going to do this again at another tournament, because I just think it looks silly. Even though it kind of works, even though I've lost all the games up to this point, I think the idea of the list kind of works. If you do well on your shooting, and don't roll badly for your shooting, then it would be much more effective. But you can't afford to have a bad round of shooting, because then you just don't kill anything, and the enemy just need to mop up the easy stuff to beat you. So in front, we've got the 5 Dwarf Warriors, because this is command and control, so you get extra points if you hold the centre. So my 5 Dwarf Warriors is just going to march up there and stand there the whole game until someone attacks them. That's their whole purpose. The Doomseeker is going to move up behind there as well, because he's not going to be able to get the charge in first, going headlong towards the cavalry. They could just charge him first. So he's going to hide behind there until the cavalry come past, and then he's going to go bleh, ambush them and charge into their flank. That's the dream for the Doomseeker. And the enemy aren't going to stay back because they're all cavalry. They need to be fighting. So here we go. Into turn 1 for me. The Rangers start shooting, and they kill some boars. The Thane with a gun starts shooting and kills a few boars off the other unit. So I think this unit may have lost... One unit's lost 2 and one unit's lost 4. So I think the 4 might be off here and the 2 are off the other unit. So I do really like this Thane with a handgun. It's just such a cool little piece in the army. With him being able to move around as well and join units for protection. Let's see, the 19 lost 4, did they? Yep, 19 off there, 4 off the 19, and then 2 off the smaller units from the Thane. So I just think he's really cool, this Thane. I really like him. I think it's thematic for a dwarf to have a powerful handgun as well. It would be better if you could take it on an engineer, because then you would be hitting on 2s, but the engineers can't take as many points of runes as the Thanes can. So you can't take the full combo on an engineer, you have to drop something. So you could drop the accuracy, since you already hit on 2s, but then you'd usually be hitting on 3s then anyway, for long range. So the Thane is just good. The engineers, you can give them some different gun combos, and at some point I'm going to run a list with just a load of engineers with different guns to see how it goes. So killing some cavalry, that's what we want in the first turn, and Doomseeker and the Dwarf Warriors moving up towards the hill, which we can't use as a hill, by the way. It's decreed at the TSN arena that in Command and Control, the central piece of terrain is impassable, so you can't go on it. One of the Grudge Throwers lands on the Wyvern and does wounds. What untold sorcery is this? Total madness that the Grudge Thrower hits anything to start with, wounds it, and then a Wyvern actually fails a save. That is truly ridiculous. Ian says, the engineer works okay, particularly if you want to sit back and give engineering bonuses to the rest of the army. Yeah, the engineer is still good, especially if you're taking like organ guns or cannons or multiple war machines that you want to be sitting around giving bonuses to, because you can then still shoot from a safe distance as well. And if you want to stay even further back, you can put a... I think you can put a crossbow on an engineer, can you? I don't know that for a fact, because I haven't tried to put one on him. But either way, you can give the engineers some pretty tasty weaponry now. So, wounds done to a Wyvern. This is totally wild. Ed says, I failed most of my triple saves on my Wyvern all weekend. No idea why people say it's broken. Yes. So, people say it's broken because it seems like other people have better dice. And on average, let's talk through what you have to do with a catapult to land it on a Wyvern. His base is not very big, so you have to get a direct hit. If it scatters, you have to scatter in very specific directions. If you scatter into one of the corners and you scatter 2 inches, then maybe it'll still land on the base. Otherwise, it's going to miss entirely or just do a partial hit, which won't do anything because it's only strength 4. So you have to land it in the middle. So a direct hit, there's a 1 in 3 chance of getting a direct hit. Then you have to roll to wound. So you've got a 5 in 6 chance of wounding. You then have the armor save, which is probably reduced to a 6+ with the -3. So you probably got a 1 in 6 chance to say armor save. Then you've got your ward save, which is 5+ probably. So you've got a 1 in 3 chance of making that. And then if you've got 5 up regen, you've got a 1 in 3 chance of making that. So that is a lot of hoops to jump through there. Just to get to the next step, which is how many wounds does it suffer? Where you roll the d3. And if it comes back with a 1, you just do 2 wounds. So various stages to get through just to do a very small amount of damage. It's a lot of dice rolls, and if one of them goes against you, you just do absolutely nothing. It's not like the Terrorgeist Scream, where it's just a dice roll and you start removing models. There's a lot of hoops to jump through for the dwarves to do their stuff. Yes, there is a misfire chance as well. So even if you get a direct hit, if you misfire that 1 in 6 times, then you still do not hit anything unless you've got a reroll on your misfire, which most of them only have once per game unless you're using an engineer. So it does a bit of damage, which is good, because now the Wyvern might be scared of hitting any of my units. You never know. So turn 1 for the Orcs, and the advance is obviously on. Now, the issue with all this Orc cavalry, there is Frenzy around and there's Impetuous around. Several of these units are either Frenzy or Impetuous. And I've got lots of Mega Death Star units they do not want to charge. That's a bad combo. You want to be picking and choosing when to charge and doing it all at the same time on the same target ideally, like focusing in on the time you know you can kill something, or just sneaking around and eating the easy stuff. That's not really possible when you've got Impetuous and Frenzy in the army. So if I'd faced more Impetuous and Frenzy lists up to this point, I think I would have done better, because people generally don't want to charge these units, especially when they're at full strength. We have a rat in the chat who says 2+ refillable wards, army broken because I always roll snake eyes. Yes, if you roll snake eyes all the time, that's usually bad in most games. Not so much for rallying and leadership tests, so you just use the same dice that you keep rolling 1s on for those tests and you'll be fine. So, the Wyvern is giving me an ultimatum. Kill me or I'm going to charge your Grudge Thrower. And so, here's an interesting situation that comes up now. This unit here is I think this is the naked one, which means, do they have Frenzy? Do the naked boars have Frenzy? Rogel says, hope Linehammer loses. Well, I've already lost 3 games up to this point. So I kind of hope it loses as well, because then people will see this and think, no, I don't want to run Linehammer. Yeah, so this unit is Frenzied. At the moment, they're out of range to charge anyone, and no one's in their charge arc. However, the Hammerers in my turn can just move sideways and put themselves in the charge arc of the Frenzied boars, which means that the boars have to charge them, which means that they will eat a stand and shoot from a Thane with the handgun of doom, and then they have to charge Hammerers in the front, who will strike first against them and eat them for breakfast. So Phil says, Doomseeker is loner, is he with the warriors? No, he's not, he's just right next to them. So technically, he should probably just, to make it clearer, he should be nudged a little bit to the side, but he is a loner, so he can't be with them. He just deployed right next to them, and they both moved up at the same speed. But he is going to run off on his own in a minute. So, we've got Orcs making their way around the side. They're making sure not to look at me. So this is the weird part of Frenzy in this game. It's such a weird rule. Frenzy and Impetuous, you do not want to be looking at the enemy sometimes. So you're turning away from them. It's like fighting Medusa in her catacombs. You have to use an elaborate mirror setup to see where the enemy is, because you can't afford to look at them, because you'll become so enraged that you just have to charge them. So it's kind of weird the way the Frenzy rule interacts with the rest of the rules in the game. It's a cool idea, but taking choice out of people's hands does lead to bizarre solutions. For example, having a long line of wolf riders blocking your line of sight so you can't actually see the enemy to have to declare charges against them. So if you give them problems, they will come up with weird solutions to them. It's like infantry. You make them rubbish, people do this nonsense with them. So if you write the rules that encourage people to build thematic lists and play in a thematic way, and make sure the rules reward that, then I think that is good game design when that happens. So at the moment, I think Frenzy and Impetuous need a bit of a rework, because the way they work right now leads to people doing this sort of thing, which you kind of have to do, otherwise you're going to be making charges you don't want to make. So I understand the intent behind putting that rule in, but I think they need to rethink a bit, because it is weird. Let's see. Yes, Hammerers are a great unit in the right circumstances, if they get to fight, which they don't always. D says the Zulus did something like that, where they made the warriors turn around during battles so they wouldn't charge in without orders. Interesting. Okay, so from a rules perspective, that's something I think could be tweaked. I don't know what you would do, because I think it is a nice thematic rule, Frenzy and Impetuous. I think they're both nice. But I don't know how you can make... You want to put the choice back in the player's hands a little bit, so that they don't have to do this sort of thing. And if you make it even more restrictive, like, for example, Frenzy means you're not allowed to look away from the enemy, you have to be facing the enemy at all times, then people just wouldn't take the units, because that would be objectively bad. So into my turn, we're going to do lots of shooting. The Hammerers have shuffled sideways, Rangers into the big unit, whittle it right down, and force them to fall back in good order, I think. And then I shuffle the Hammerers sideways a bit to get into the charge arc of these frenzied boars, and then shoot them with the Thane. And actually, I think the Thane shoots at the big unit instead, because I'm so confident this unit's going to die when it charges in that I shoot everything into those boars instead. So that's how I killed quite a few of them. Here comes the Doomseeker. So I don't know whether he actually attempted a charge this turn. I don't think he could. I don't think he's close enough. But he's now all the way out here, ready to strike. And if the enemy don't do something about him, he could potentially charge the wolves that are clearly just there to contest the central objective. And the enemy can't be too close to him because he does have a potential 12-inch charge as well. So I haven't killed the Wyvern this turn. You'll notice it's still alive despite the Grudge Throwers having a go at it. So, what's all this then? Well, the same trick I was talking about before. The Grudge Thrower flees at the sight of the Wyvern. You just intentionally flee off the table edge, hoping that the Wyvern then reaches the edge. Because if it kills the Grudge Thrower in combat, which it undoubtedly would, then after combat it would be able to restrain on a leadership test and then turn around to face this way and be a threat to my army still. If I flee off the table, it continues its charge, and then just stays here facing this way. So now it's not a threat next turn, and if it had gone even further and got all the way off the edge, it still wouldn't be a threat next turn either. So this is kind of ideal, because it's facing the wrong way, and now I can throw another rock at it. And I was going to lose this Grudge Thrower anyway, but now the Wyvern is in less than optimal position. Let's see, Ed is okay with it as is. So it's okay, but I think some of the people who are hyper-competitive would avoid Frenzy and Impetuous units like the plague, because they like to have all their choices. They don't like any of those taken away from them. They don't like the enemy to be able to manipulate those choices for them. Martin says, easy, you are not forced to charge a unit of higher unit strength. Just because it is eager for a scrap doesn't mean they are stupid. Something like that. Could be a little tweak there. Rogul says, Impetuous has put me off making a Goblin Wolf Rider army. Weirdly enough, the Hobgoblin Wolf Riders don't have Impetuous. I'm going to assume that's because the Chaos Dwarves whip them into shape and tell them that if they disobey orders and run off on their own, they're in some serious trouble down in the mines. Ian says, Goblin Wolf Riders should not have Impetuous. Goblins are meant to be cunning, not suicidal. I don't understand why Dragon Princes have it either. Yeah, there are a lot of units with Impetuous in the game that are a little bit weird. I agree. And I can understand it being in there if they're... It's not necessarily that Impetuous units are stupid and they're charging against the odds. It's more like they're so overconfident and proud, some of the units. Wolf Riders, I'm going to guess it's because it's the wolves that aren't easily controlled by the goblins riding them, and that's why they have it. So there's a chance the wolf will just bolt off on its own and the goblin can't do anything about it. So I think that's a decent representation of that, so I kind of understand it being there. Dragon princes, I'm going to guess it's because they're just so noble, they think, well, we can take on anything, that's not going to do anything to us, not even going to scratch us, let's just go in and chop its head off, no matter what it is. So I can kind of understand what they're going for, but the fact that it is the same rule across lots of different, thematically different units makes it odd. So, the boars have to charge, and they take a couple of casualties from the stand and shoot from the Thane. These ones spin round to face the hammerers, and also they may well be getting charged by a Doomseeker next as well, we'll see, because the wolves have shuffled out of his line of sight. So this big unit of boars with the, what was the character in there? The big boss, have made their way towards the rangers. And the wizard is hiding back there as well. So, moving on to the charge. Actually, there's a spell been plopped down here. So, we've got the Foot of Gork and another one back there behind the rangers. So, this unit actually do not make their charge, because it was a very long charge, but they still have to declare it because it was theoretically possible. So they took the stand and shoot, but then failed the charge. That's like the nightmare for a frenzy unit, that you fail the charge after you've just eaten a stand and shoot. So into my turn, I'm going to try and blast these units off the face of the earth now. So the Doomseeker charges into the boars, and they choose to flee, because these ones are not frenzied, which I would guess would mean they wouldn't be allowed to flee if they were frenzied. I think these ones do not have frenzy, though. I think it's only the naked ones. So they're running away. The Doomseeker's after them, but doesn't catch them. And let's see, if you hold against a Doomseeker, what happens? He gets in, does his impact hits, does his 2d3 attacks. He could feasibly wipe out the front rank. So I can understand not wanting to be charged by him. I definitely get that. The shooting takes out some more boars. And the Thane totally wipes out the unit of 5 that was still alive there. D says, I actually love every infantry unit in this list. I might have to try it myself. There is a fun element to this list. It doesn't make for unfun games, in my opinion, because I'm obviously not wiping the floor with my opponents because I've lost all the games up till this point. So it does give people a chance because it's only 2 big units to avoid. It's powerful if you play into its hands, and I think frenzied units kind of don't have a choice about playing into its hands, and impetuous units. Let's see, Ed says, I did make a stupid mistake next turn. The Wyvern has flies, so it doesn't have to test to march, so it could have gotten much closer to the other grudge thrower and rangers. That is interesting, because I don't think I've done that with my gyrocopters. I don't think I've ever played it that they ignore having to test to march. So that's not something I was aware of. I haven't used a lot of flyers marching around the enemy. And dwarves have high leadership anyway, so I'd routinely pass those regardless. So on to turn 3 for the orcs. So the Foot of Gork moves into the corner a bit because it randomly moves, like giant horrible spells should, not just in a line of your choice like the Pillar of Fire. If Pillar of Fire just got deleted from the game, I think the public would be generally happy. But really, it should just be like the other Vortex spells, so move randomly. So I've turned the Doomseeker to face his butt cheeks towards the enemy to intimidate them, but he's actually just still facing this way. The boars do rally though, but he's going to be able to charge them again, and they can't afford to flee again because they'll probably go off the table. And there we go, close up of the cheeks. So the stand and shoot from the rangers kill all but 2 boars in this unit. So that's going to be some serious combat resolution. An extra 4, so I killed 4 of them, so that's good. Ian says, Pillar of Fire ought to be either random or a lot weaker. Yes, if you're going to have a vortex that you can move around in a direction of your choice, it should be considerably weaker, I think. Maybe just not have AP on it. So, the Wyvern should have been allowed to move further this turn, because it shouldn't have had to do a test, because it's a flyer. So really, it should have come and landed over here somewhere, which means that I would have had to counter it. And what my plan was to try and counter the Wyvern was to potentially pop this guy out and shoot him, Or pop out Ungrim and sit him around here somewhere. So that if you want to charge Ungrim, okay, I suppose I can live with that. If you don't kill him, he will then probably kill you with his monster-killing blow, Monster Slayer. So you never know, that could happen. So I would have to deal with him if he was closer. As it is, I think I can get out of his range with everything. So, in the middle, what's going on there? So, oh yeah, the Doomseeker gets killed, which is sad, but the Shaman just kills him with a fireball or something, so he's dead. Over here, we've got into combat, so the Rangers are taking casualties. The Runesmith refuses the challenge. So yeah, this is going to come up again. So it was ruled at this event that if you refuse a challenge and you're in a long line, you just create a new second rank. So you can refuse a challenge. Does anyone know for a fact that that's not the case and that you just can't refuse a challenge if you're in one long line? And to therefore refuse challenges, you would have to have a couple of guys hanging back in a second rank so that you could then refuse and go and join those two. Does anyone know which one is supposed to be the case for a fact? I don't know if it's anything that's been covered in the FAQ, but maybe it could be. So you'll see that I killed off the other boar as well in combat. However, I did lose this combat with the Rangers slightly, but passed the leadership. Because this orc boss on boar did quite a lot of damage there. And so despite the 4 wounds I did on the stand and shoot as well, I do actually lose by 1, I think. But they do not flee. But because they've taken some casualties, then they're going to be out of charge range of the Wyvern, whatever happens next turn. So, into my turn 4. Phil says didn't find it in the FAQ. Yeah, I think that's something they should clarify, because I'm not sure what the intent is. Whether the intent is that you should be allowed to form a new back rank with the unit with the model that refuses the challenge. In which case you would see the lines with the weird extra few guys hanging off the back so that you could then refuse a challenge and go and hang out with them. Which would be a weird thing to have to do. So the Thane is going off on his own and blasting. And he blasts the Shaman into smithereens. And the Rangers kill the Orc war boss. And then they spin round a bit with a reform. That's as far as they can go though, because you can't reform a million inches as much as I would like to. So, all the boar boys are dead over there. There's still 1 unit on this side. So, the Grudge Thrower is also pivoted away from the Wyvern, so it can't charge, because it's just outside the declarable range now. And the Hammerers have turned backwards, so they're going to face the Wyvern. So, because I'm out of range, this Wyvern is still frenzied, I think. Or, is it impetuous? It might be impetuous. Ian says, I'd read it that you can't refuse, but the TO's ruling seems a reasonable compromise. Yes, I think so. I'm not sure if it was actually a TO's ruling on this one. I think it was more of a... several veteran players might have been gathered around. Because we did ask for a lot of TO questions. I can't remember if this was one of them, or whether it was a mini committee of veteran players that said, yes, that's how it works. So Phil says, in the rules, they quite ominously only speak of not being in the fighting rank. Yeah, so I think... because it would lead to weird formations with one guy hanging off the back, I would say you should be allowed to just jump to the back rank and create a new one if you refuse a challenge. I think that's more likely to be the intent. But you never know. So, because this guy is impetuous, he has to, 50% chance, charge the Hammerers, because no one else is in charge range. Which could end badly for him, but you never know. So, he does fail the impetuosity test, has to charge them. And what is my response to this going to be? I could refuse the challenge, in which case he would say, okay, Ungrim, get to the back, you're not fighting. Or I could accept it with a Hammerer, because I'm unbreakable, and I could just sacrifice 1 Hammerer per turn, and just keep surviving easily. However, that's not very fun, is it? Because I think I'm already going to win this game, because I've killed so much, that the margin of victory isn't that big of a deal, because I'm not going to win the tournament from this position. So, what I do is, as we see where the enemy are closing in on me, Ungrim accepts the challenge, because it's just going to be fun, and I'm going to get to strike first, because he doesn't get his initiative bonus from charging into the Hammerers. So Ungrim, and I think the Wyvern's tail strikes first, actually, and then Ungrim. So Ungrim actually takes a wound, but I still win the combats because I've got a BSB and the Rune of Battle and all that stuff. And I do not kill him. I actually had 4 successful hits against him because I've got Hatred, and they all hit. So I was fishing for 1-6. If I rolled a 6 to wound, then he would have been on only a 5+ ward or would have been dead, because of that Monster Slayer special rule. But unfortunately, none of the 4 wound rolls came up as 6s, so the Wyvern was not slain, and he did 1 wound to Ungrim, lost the combat, and ran away. So obviously, the optimal thing to do would have been to turn down the challenge and then hit him with a billion hammer strikes, which may well have killed him, but it's more fun to do the challenge with Ungrim, because I'm going to win the game anyway. So, turn 5 for me. And the Hammerers try to charge after this guy again. I think he's out of range. They charge into the boars, and the boars flee. Wisely, because I think if I touch them, I would just kill too many of them. They would not stand up to that. Ungrim's attacks, and then all the Hammerers with 1 attack each. It would not end well for the boar boys, so they flee. And then, I almost swing round and touch the Wyvern. If I'd rolled a bit higher on the charge... Now, I don't know whether I could have physically rolled high enough to get to him. I don't think I could. But if the Wyvern had been a bit closer to me, and I charged the boars, and they flee, when I swing round, if I make accidental contact with that Wyvern, it just gets deleted because it's already fleeing. So that would have been a hilarious way to kill a Wyvern. But he's already so far away, I don't think I could physically make it there anyway. So, what else happens in this turn? The Thane with the handgun pops out and tries to shoot the Wyvern, but doesn't do anything. And in the enemy turn, what's this? Boar boys fail to rally and run straight off the table. Okay, bonus. So there's not much left for the Orcs, and the Wyvern rallies and goes to hide behind this building a little bit. He can't get out of sight yet, though. Foot of Gork in the middle of the table. Oh, by the way, you'll notice on day 2 I've switched to the orange dice. That's because the dwarf dice, some of my opponents I felt were struggling to read the numbers on them. And I can understand, because some of the dwarf dice are better than others. They're not consistently patterned. They're kind of weathered like stone, kind of, that sort of effect. But for that reason, sometimes it's difficult to pick out like which one's the 5, which one's the 3, which is the 1. Some of the dice pips that have a similar arrangement of dots, because of the pattern on the dice where it's like a worn stone, sometimes it's difficult to read some of them. So I think because my opponents were just struggling a bit, I switched over to these much more clear dice for day 2. So that is an issue with the dwarf dice, by the way, if anyone's thinking of buying them. In fact, all the GW current dice. The old world blue ones are okay. The orc dice are an absolute nightmare. I think they're green with red pips, which is just a terrible combo for anyone with any kind of mild colour blindness. So they're really bad to read. So I don't know how GW keep doing this. Make their dice so terrible, either to read or to roll. Or back in the day, the issue was that they had the symbols on the ones, which was a terrible time. But Forge World had the symbols on the 6s. They weren't even consistent across the company. So they just never seem to get dice 100% right. But chumps like me keep buying them, because they look cool. So these dice, these orange ones, they're from a tournament. That entry of the tournament got you a set of these fancy orange dice. And they're orange because it's a social mixed doubles event for Age of Sigmar. And I won the previous year's event. When I say mixed doubles, I mean you get a different teammate in each round. So I won that, so I was able to pick the colour of the dice for the next year, and I picked orange, so that's what these are from. Phil says, I hope the Chaos dice are better from the images, they looked clearer. I think I've seen those, they do look alright actually. But it's not that difficult. You have a light colour, and you have a dark pip. Or you have a dark colour and a very light pip. How is that so difficult to pull off? Like this. Look at, these are the honest wargamer dice with the big H. Following the rules. Dark and light. How is that so difficult for dice manufacturers to figure out? So, on to my turn 6. the hammerers, all they're doing is edging closer to this bit of terrain, because some of these dwarf warriors got killed, by the way, which means that they can't contest this command and control objective. So the hammerers just get a bit closer. The grudge thrower lands on the wyvern's head, but doesn't kill it. As you can see, I've got it down to 2 wounds. So with the final rock of the game, if I'd rolled a 5 or a 6 on the dice, I would have killed it. But I could only do 2 wounds instead of 4. So on average, I wasn't going to kill it though, because obviously I had to jump through all the hoops of the failing of the armor saves, and then I have to roll a 5 or a 6 on the dice just to get enough wounds to kill it. So on average, it shouldn't die, but it would have been nice to finally kill a wyvern. But as it is, at the end of the game, wyvern lives, the wolf riders live, this shaman lives, and most of my army is still alive. There's 1 grudge thrower dead, and that's about it. So not a very successful game for the orcs, as you can imagine there. So let's have a look at the final result for kill points. So my opponent picked up 95 for the grudge thrower, as the Doomseeker got killed, so there's no 50 for that, and I got 1,471, leading to a 17-3 win for the dwarves. So that is like the dream matchup. You've got lots of units that are forced to charge you by their special rules, and charging into my army is what I want people to do. I don't want them to spend turns and turns softening me up with magic and shooting first. I want them to have to get stuck in immediately while I've still got the full width and I can hit them with 1,000 attacks back. And then, at lunchtime on day 2, I took pictures of all the armies. So, we've got some dwarves with 10 gyrocopters. Now that's an army, alright. And I was talking with some people at lunchtime actually about how the old world armies don't really look like traditional Warhammer fantasy armies. Now this obviously doesn't, because it doesn't have any blocks of troops, but it's still very cool. Look at all those. So apparently this is very fun to run, but I'll never find out because there's no way I'm assembling another 7 gyrocopters. I would rather glue my own fingers together, I think. So some very nice models in here. That's a very nice conversion there. The handgun, who's that from? Is it an Age of Sigmar gun, or is it from another dwarf? And I think that's the... is it the Longbeard Ironbreaker bits on a Caradron Overlord's Admiral? That bit looks like there. So very nice. Loads of gyrocopters, a couple of pony carts. Could well be the gun from the old Cogsmith or Grim Burloxen. Could be. Then we've got Chaos. So some Chaos Warriors, some level 4 and a Demon Prince, and some Dragon Ogres and a Hell Cannon. Nice. This is looking more like an old school fantasy army, except maybe with more Saurus blocks, and probably you'd want some Temple Guard and a block of Skinks with some Croxigor in it, and then it'd look exactly like the old school armies from the old books. Because look at that, Stegodon, very nice. I suppose you'd want a Slann in there as well, get that full old school look, but skirmishing Skinks are very good. Look at that though, pure old school. This is the era of lizard men that I respect. None of this new plastic nonsense, old school metal. Then we've got some Empire, and it's not a gun line, only a couple of war machines, some infantry, cavalry, and I do prefer the old school Empire stuff. The old Empire Knights, I hope they bring those back. They had some really nice thematic looking units of Knights, the Empire. Some really distinct ones, and they were very distinct from Bretonnians as well, which was good. You've got 2 human armies that both have Knights as a major part of their army, but you're not going to get them confused. They have their own really unique looks, so I really like the old Empire Cavalry. Hope they bring them back. But these ones are nice paint jobs as well. I think most of this is the new Cities of Sigmar stuff. We've got some Bretonnians with snow speckled on them. And if your army lacks a light colour to contrast against the dark, sprinkling snow on it is definitely a good move. Now this army is already colourful enough anyway, but snow is a good tip. Just adds a bit of light to the dark if you've got a very dark army. These are very nice. Multicoloured Bretonnian Knights, that's just what you want to see. And I think these guys, don't think these ones are GW, but I think almost everything else is. So very nice. And this is the Orcs and Goblins that I faced earlier on with all the Night Goblins with the Fanatics. Very stylish. Then there's one of the Nomadic Waaghs. This is the one I played first of all out of the two, with all the chariots. Some nice close-ups here of the cavalry as well. Then we've got some more dwarves. So these are a mixture of GW and Highland miniatures, because obviously you couldn't even buy dwarves for a while. So people that didn't already have like 4,000 points of dwarves sitting in their cabinet waiting for the old world to come back obviously had to get them from somewhere. So I think, which one's a Highland in here? Because these are GW. That's GW. The cannon, I think, is probably Highland miniatures. And these are GW Longbeards here. I don't know about that unit there. Those look GW-ish, at least some of them. Yeah, I think those are GW, those ones. Oh, the Rangers aren't. Those are Highland as well. And the Anvil of Doom, of course. GW wouldn't make an anvil that tiny. And then we've got Skaven, which is the army that I played, with the rats, swarms, and the giant rats. That was very tricky to deal with this big unit there, of the gutter runners with the level 4s. Then we've got some more Skaven. And now this army would probably get my vote for the army that looks most like an old school Warhammer Fantasy army. And it's built as such. The rules should be designed so that this is a kind of army that is effective. So you've got big blocks of troops, you've got support war machines, you've got support shooting units, you've got chaff units as well, you've got some annoying scouts. It's like the perfect army composition. If you were building in 40k they'd call it like a force organization chart, something like that, with slots that you have to fill with certain types of units, you would kind of want it to look like this. For a really good looking game of Warhammer, this is the kind of army you want. And a nice pillar of fire representation there as well. Then we've got some more snow sprinkling onto some chaos. Is it chaos or is it chaos dwarves? I think it's chaos dwarves, because there are some orcs in there as well. So now I didn't play against this army, but you can see what I mean with the snow. This is a very dark army, and that snow just adds some really nice contrast to it. Now this thing at the back is a very impressive model. A very cool army here. Then we have got, I don't know, would this be Empire? It must be Empire, because those are going to be Demigryph Knights, aren't they? With some war machines on the top. So I don't know where these miniatures are from, but the paint jobs are interesting, aren't they? Very cool, very stylish. Oh, is this the one that won the Coolest Army Award? Yeah, it is very cool. With my own personal biases, I tend to only vote for the old school looking GW armies, just because that's how I like my Warhammer Fantasy from the 90s. I'm a dinosaur. But very cool. Then we've got some dwarves, which are, I think these are mostly Highland. But again, with the snow speckled in there, brings the whole army up a level. Anvil of Doom at the back. Grudge throwers. Loads of Iron Drakes. That's one big line of Iron Drakes, so Linehammer is definitely real. And you should be scared of it. Then we've got some more Skaven. Lots of rats. Doesn't have the support machines in this one. It's just got lots more rats. Still cool. And I don't imagine Skaven are that difficult to paint, because they're very grim looking, aren't they? So I imagine they can be done fairly quickly. These ones have clearly got some highlighting going on though, so that's nice. Okay, into the next round. I'm against Skaven again, and I took photos of the spells first actually. So one of the casters in the enemy list has Wind Blast, Warp Lightning, and Storm Demon. And the other one has Arrow Attraction, Pillar of Fire, Cloud of Corruption, and Fireball. So let's have a look at the game. Let me pull up the list in the round 5. So this means I've faced 3 Orcs and Goblins with Wyverns and 2 Skaven lists. So the odds of that are quite slim, because as you saw there's a huge variety of armies I could have faced. I haven't faced any of the Bretonnians, there were loads of those. Multiple Chaos Dwarves, didn't have to face any of them, which is probably a good thing, because I think they're quite powerful against Dwarves. Didn't face any of the other Dwarves. So, let me pull up this list here. So, look at that. Looking over the top, and this is a very similar setup to the one I used in the previous game that had the same terrain layout, with the hill in the middle, hammers in front, rangers behind. But you'll see I've got the rangers extended off the hill on this one a bit, rather than a 3rd rank. And let's go over to the Skaven forces. So we've got some gutter runners, we've got some giant rats, not rat swarms. We've got the Plague Claw Catapult, is that still what it's called? Yes. We've got 3 units of clan rats, 20 of them, and they all have the rattling gun with them and a command. Then there's another Plague Claw Catapult there, more giant rats, Plague Sensor Bearers, more giant rats, and there are some heroes. So this one here is, let me see, I think that one's the Plague Priest hanging out over there. And then we've got a level 4 Grey Seer with Ruby Ring of Ruin, Lore Familiar, Battle Magic. And the Plague Priest is level 2 with Elementalism and Storm Demon. So let's go to the layout and see what my plan is. First of all, there were less gutter runners in this list, only 1 unit. So if I screened out both sides, I think the commitment I have to use to do that, I could have put these guys out there, but I think they then just die. Because the gutter runners would deploy 12 inches away from them and immediately kill them with poison attacks and give up the points easily. So I kind of just invite them to go after the war machine. Because I've got my Thane around here, he can pop out of a unit and shoot them, and hopefully kill them all in one go. That would be the dream. The Doomseeker's out there. He's going to go towards the giant rats, because those are things he can kill that aren't much of a threat to him striking back. So he can hopefully chomp his way through them. In the middle, the hammerers are going to step down off the hill, so the rangers can start shooting. The enemy shooting is maybe more punishing than mine, potentially. Equal catapults, we've got 2 each. The Jezzails are longer range than a lot of shooting in the game. They're good. They're good defensively in the front as well. Lots of poison attacks, the poison wind globadiers if they get close as well. Rattling guns. So I might be outgunned if I don't start killing stuff early here. But I do have the bonus of having my ward save banner. And I have obviously better armour than the Skaven and higher toughness. So we'll see. Let's go into turn 1. And turn 1 goes to the rats, which is not very friendly. And they put a wound onto the grudge thrower with their poison little daggers. Then, I don't think I've taken too many casualties elsewhere. You can see, by the way, I've got my runesmith in with the rangers, and I've got Ungrim and the BSB and the Thane with a handgun in the hammerers. So, the Jezzails open fire. They do another wound to the grudge thrower, so it's hanging on, and as long as it hangs on, it stops them targeting anything else, really, because they want to finish this off. So into my turn 1. Doomseeker, seeking his doom, making his way towards the enemy. He puts himself just within charge range of the rats if they want to have a go. Grudge thrower fires. The other one fires. And I don't do that much. Kill a few rats. The Thane pops out of this unit to blast the gutter runners and kills 4 of them, half the unit, but they pass their leadership and they're not going anywhere. The rangers, they open fire as well as the grudge throwers, and they don't do too much. Not a lot of rats killed in that turn. Pillar of Fire is now here, by the way. It was cast in the last turn, and it's now moving this way, and it's about to bounce over my whole army. So, I could have easily avoided this, because the Thane moved out of the unit, and he's now a gap, which means the Pillar of Fire can move through all 4 units. So I elected to do that. You might think that's madness, but I thought these gutter runners are going to do more than the Pillar of Fire, and a Thane is toughness 5, so it's quite difficult for the Pillar of Fire to damage him. So I'm hoping that I was going to kill that unit of gutter runners with the Thane's handgun. And then he'd take a couple of rounds of Pillar of Fire and then dive back into a unit. So that's my hope, because otherwise it's going to be quite punishing. But I thought it was worth it to try and get rid of those gutter runners. So Pillar of Fire bounces over everyone, does a little bit of damage, but not too much. My Runesmith, you can see, has got 2 auto dispels left, because I've already shut down 1 spell. The rats move up, they do not charge the Doomseeker. Now, if you're just chaff, I can understand this, because if you die on your own turn, then you're just freeing up the Doomseeker to kill the other one on my turn. So don't charge, just sit there. Now I've got to take twice as long to kill you. So, the other rats over on this side moving in. And I don't think I targeted them with anything in my turn. So, the Grudge Thrower takes more attacks, poisoned attacks, but doesn't die. And the Jezzails, I think, shoot it as well. A couple of hammers drop, I think, from various Rattling Gun unloads. The 2 Rattling Guns there, and I think that's the 3rd one right there as well. Rats in front of me. Now, do I want to charge those rats? Yes, because unlike the previous game against the rats, where there were rats parked in front of me, I'm saying rats a lot, I'm aware. In the previous instance, when if I'd charged the rats, the way I lined up would have sent me away from the bulk of the enemy forces. In this case, if I try and charge the rats and they flee, I'm actually quite close to some significant enemy units. One of them has the general in it as well. So I wouldn't be too displeased about that. If they hold to try and keep me in position, then I could maybe turn to face and I'm just closer to the enemy, or I could overrun and maybe overrun into something. It depends how wide I am when I get there. We'll have to see how it lines up. But in theory, I want to charge that unit and maybe get closer to the enemy and maybe start trying to kill things around here as well. Because there's enough units there that I can catch, but they're not as elusive as the previous Skaven army. So, you can see that many hammerers have died so far and that many rangers and dwarf warriors. Into my turn too. So the Pillar of Fire blasts through again. Thankfully doesn't kill the Thane, so he's got a chance to duck into a unit now if he wants to. So now it's really my turn, and, well, the Doomseeker, he sought his doom against the giant rats, but he killed a few and they fled off the table. He restrained, and now he's going to try and kill that unit next. The Hammerers kill the rats who decided not to flee, and now, if I'd overrun a bit further, I would have actually gone into this Rattling Gun, which would have been great, because of the way they lined up after the charge. But sadly I didn't roll high enough on the overrun, so can't get in there yet. But I am close to the enemy level 4 now with my Runesmith, which means I'll be able to auto-dispel some of the spells. The Thane popped back into the Rangers and they did some shooting, but they didn't kill many rats. The Rangers have been really disappointing in this game. In other games they were a little bit disappointing in some of them. This one they've had a very bad time trying to kill rats. Grudge Thrower misfires and is facing the wrong way because it can't fire. Next turn. And there we go, moving on into the Skaven turn, which is actually turn 3, I think. I haven't turned the dice over though. So the rats charging the Doomseeker. They've learned their lesson. Don't let him get impact hits. Charge him first. Obviously they're in. The level 4 starts casting spells, which I'm trying to auto shut down. I think the one I can't remember which spell it was. Anything that is debuffing my unit to make it easier to hit me. Or it may have been the Curse of Arrow Attraction, actually, that I auto shut down. Because that would have meant that it's easier for them to hit me. And also they can mitigate the risk of rolling a 1, which then might kill you if you're Skaven. So I would shut that down. And the Poison Wind Globadiers are moving up, so they can shoot me as well. Just everything is going to target the Hammerers now. They're going to try and kill the whole unit. Rattling Guns, Jezzails, everything at them. Everything that can see them. And the Grudge Thrower is killed by the Gutter Runners finally. Yes, just confirmation it is turn 3. Catapult. Doesn't do too much. Might kill some rangers there. And now it's time to shoot the Hammerers. That doesn't look good. That's a lot of 6s from a Rattling Gun. So they're whittling the Hammerers down even more as everything just piles its shots in there. We're down to 3 Hammerers. So there's less than 5 rank and file, which means at this point you then start allocating wounds one by one. So my understanding is that the first 3 wounds that come in from an attack will go for the 3 rank and file, and then you would start allocating them between these 3 one at a time, and then start again like that. That's my understanding of it. Okay, you can see there is a vortex here as well that's trying to block me in. So, into my turn. What am I going to do? It's a risky move, but dwarves are so slow that if I charge that rattling gun, it will still be able to stand and shoot me because I'm not more than 3 inches away. Or I'm not closer than 3 inches. But I have to dispel this first, which I'm going to have to use my auto dispel on, which I looked in the rules and it seems like you can use the auto dispel rune of spell breaking as a successful dispel roll, and that just counts as a dispel roll, trying to dispel a remains in play spell. If anyone knows that not to be the case, or it's been FAQ'd or anything, let me know. And in this combat here, by the way, the Doomseeker did kill some rats, but they weren't too scared. So he followed up after them. So into my turn. And the Pillar of Fire is chasing after my units again, chipping off a couple of rangers each time. Doomseeker kills more rats, they run away, he does not successfully catch them. The remaining hammerers and the characters charge into the rattling gun, who unloads his stand and shoot and kills one of them, or 2 of them actually. They make it in, they kill him, and then overrun into the next one. So they can't fight it now, obviously, but they're locked in combat, so they can't be targeted with shooting now, which is a big deal. The Thane tried to shoot the gutter runners and missed both his shots, which is obviously not ideal. So he's now out the unit and vulnerable to the Pillar of Fire as well. Grudge Thrower lands a big hit on some clan rats and they run away. But I think the level 4 popped out that unit because they were taking casualties earlier, and he's now in this one, I think. So the Rangers unload as well, and they do some damage to rats. So there we go, this unit's running away, the level 4 general is in there. So because the Runesmith's now in combat though, it means I can't use him to dispel, so I won't get the +1, and I will only be able to stop 1 spell per turn with the Fated Dispel. Pillar of Fire again, kills more Rangers. Rats run. So, they failed to rally, and they were 2.1 inches, no, actually 3.1 inches away from the table edge, because Skaven get +1 on fleeing, and they rolled a double 1. So they went 3 inches, so they are like 1 millimeter away from the table edge. So they have 1 more chance to rally, or they'll be dead. There we go, there's the double 1. Doomseeker is charged by the Plague Priest, and all the other rats are just converging, ready to unload against the Rangers with their shooting, and the Plague Censer Bearers are going to throw their poisonous gases at the Grudge Thrower. The Plague Claw Catapult lands on the Rangers and does a bit of damage, and the Gutter Runners are shooting as well. I think they try and poison the Thane, but they don't manage to wound him, which is good. The Rangers are running out of models now. I think they don't know whether they had to take a panic take this turn, because their casualties have been spread out across the game, so they're generally not having to take panic checks, because they're not taking all the casualties in 1 round. It's just been a few wounds sprinkled in here and there. So you can see Ungrim has taken a wound previously as well. That was from a round of shooting, because the shots were randomised kind of between these 3 after they were allocated to the rank and file. So he took a wound. And when I say randomised, I mean it's random which one of them you hit first. I think that's the case. And then after that, you just go 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. So he took a wound, which is why there's a 2 dice next to him. But they obviously kill the second rattling gun and turn to face the general's bunker. So next turn, I'm going to be able to try and charge them. The Doomseeker is killed by the Plague Priest, and the death blow doesn't do anything to him. Which is kind of sad that he's dead. And let's see here. So the image slideshow has stopped moving, so I'm going to bring up the technical difficulties logo momentarily. Let's see if I've got that on here. I'll just bring up the thumbnail, and I will go into my documents and see what the issue is with that. Let's have a look. Yes, so all the files are actually there. So I'm just going to close that down and open it up again. Let's see, where was I? think we were about here. So I've got it on roughly the same spot we were at. Okay, we can get rid of the thumbnail. There we are. I think this is where we were, roughly. Okay, what is going on here? Is that actually slightly smaller now? Let's drag that out a bit. This is risky. Whenever you start moving windows around, crazy things happen. There we go, that'll do. So, moving on. Let's get back to where we were. So, Doomseeker's dead. I wonder if Windows Photo Viewer has a limit of how many files you can go through before it cuts you off temporarily. Okay, so the Thane in this turn actually finishes off the Gutter Runners with his handgun, which is great. Finally get the points for them. It only took me multiple turns of shooting. I do need some standby music, actually. So, Ungrim and pals charge after the General's bunker, who wisely flee, I think, because if they stay there, they would take a lot of damage. They would not really get to fight back much, because the front rank would get obliterated, and they would lose by a lot. I've got a BSB there as well, so I think this is probably the right choice. It means I can't hit the Grey Seer yet. The downside is, though, that they now have to rally. So, turn 5 for the Skaven. Pillar of Fire does some more kills. And what's this? The General's unit of rats fails to rally and runs straight off the table. Wow, wow, wow. So that is very rat-like behaviour. Run away from a charge and don't stop. Just keep running, leave the battle, go home to the sewers, and just hang out there until it all blows over. So that is a significant chunk of points there, because that level 4 Grey Seer is 275 points. The unit he's in is 182 points, so that is a big chunk of points there. So that's probably just sealed the win. And the rats are going to continue blasting, and in fact they do kill the final hammerer. So these three are now individual units, so you're going to be able to target them, and they're kind of on their own. So they're going to go off and try and do some missions on their own in a second. But all the hammerers are dead, so that's a big chunk of points for the Skaven as well. The rangers are just hanging on still, and the grudge thrower is hanging on as well. The rats charge into the Thane. Stand and shoot kills quite a few of them. The grudge thrower is dead from the plague sensor bearers. The rats lose combat against the Thane and run away, but he doesn't catch them. And into my turn 5. So the rangers shoot, and was anything out there? I think I kill off that last unit of 5. No, actually there's 2 left, and then they flee up onto the hill. So they are running. Ungrim moves into this position so he can charge the Jezzails in the next turn. And they can't turn around and shoot these guys, which is one downside. So none of my characters can be targeted by them at the moment. The Runesmith and the BSB are going this way, so that maybe they can charge the Plague Claw catapult later. The Runesmith isn't that bothered though, he just wants to hide and not die. The Thane, next time it shoots, it's shooting at the Plague Sensor Bearers, and misses with both his shots again. So he's really hit or miss, this guy, but when he hits, he is amazing. Turn 6 for the Skaven. The 2 rats fail to rally and run towards the edge, but don't reach it. The Plague Sensor Bearers surround the rangers and start shooting them. We're down to 2 rangers. Then 1 ranger from the next shot. And that's it. So even the rattling gun, the Plague Sensor Bearers, the Plague Claw catapult, the Jezzails, everything firing at the rangers leaves 1 alive. Which means that that's going to be a nice chunk of points that the rats are not going to get. And they're not even fleeing. So, turn 6 for me. It's going to be the end of the game. Ungrim charges the Jezzails, kills a few of them, and they run away. He doesn't catch them, but they are fleeing at the end of the game, so I will get something for that. The BSB kills all the Plague Claw catapult crew in combat. So that's a good job done by him there. And not much else going on. The ranger doesn't do anything, doesn't want to get himself killed. The warriors don't want to get themselves killed. The Thane with a handgun. Does he finish off the rats? I think he finishes off the rats that were running away from him. So that's some more points there. And the final shot of the game does involve a human hand reaching in for a rat swarm that are being removed from the table. So There are only 8 dwarf models left on the table at the end. But they are all super expensive. All the heroes are alive. The ranger unit is alive with 1 model. So let's look at the final scores for that game, because I killed a lot. So my opponent scored 755 points, which is for the hammerers, the grudge throwers, and whittling this unit down to 1 model. And I think that's it. I scored for most of the opposing army. There are some clan rats left, a rattling gun, some rats, the plague censer bearers, the plague priest, I think, alive. So I managed to get 1,582 points, which is it includes the bonus for the general as well. So that means it's a 14-6 win for the dwarves, so a nice one to end on there. And I managed to get revenge on day 2 against the same factions that obviously defeated me on day 1, the Skaven and the Orcs and Goblins. And I think the lists were a bit more favourable on day 2. The heavy cavalry list is not ideal against my army because you don't want to be charging me and you just get stunned and shot to death. And they had to because they were impetuous and frenzied, so that was kind of a bad matchup for them. And this Skaven list wasn't as elusive as the other one, so I was able to get in there. The hammerers, even though they got killed, were able to get across the table and do damage, and with Ungrim in there were a good delivery system for him, and ended up causing the enemy general to run off the table as well. So did a good job. The rangers did well surviving. The Thane with the handgun had a real hit and miss performance. Killing individual rats was a bit of a problem, but I did kill off enough units in the end, because all that stuff up there, apart from the Jezzails, they're dead, but they are fleeing. So, killed a lot of expensive stuff. Killed both the catapults. Did actually mention that one of the catapults blew itself up in the first turn. I don't think I mentioned that. There were 2 Plague Claw catapults. In turn 1, the first shot of the game, it blew itself up. I don't know if I mentioned it. Gemmel says Linehammer is the mind killer. So 2 wins out of 5 with Linehammer. Is that a good result? I feel like the list works. I feel like my shooting should have done more damage than it did in some of the early games, which would have helped. And also, I think tweaking the list to add better support units. I think it needs gyrocopters just to help the hammerers charge things. I think that's a big deal. Because you can't flee, because the gyrocopter will run you down if it's a double charge. So I think that is something that is very helpful. The rangers I like. Either them or the hammerers survived in every game. One of them did. It's very difficult to kill that much. Gemmel says I'm 3 hours late. Yes, this is the end. We're nearly at 3 hours into the stream. Yes. So, overall, I think Linehammer is not broken, but it is kind of necessary for some units with the way the rules are right now, so I hope they don't just nerf it without changing any of the other rules. My suggestion is that they just change the scoring system so that infantry is more important somehow. Make unit strength a big deal. You'll see big units of infantry back. And obviously you don't want to take it too far because people will just swarm the table with 1,000,000 goblins and nothing else and you won't be able to kill them all. That was sort of what happened in 8th because you had steadfast, so if you had more ranks than the enemy, then I think you were always rolling on your stubborn leadership. So that was an issue in 8th edition. So there's a balancing act to be had. You want infantry to be useful so that people take it, but not too useful. And then you can reduce the lines because infantry has another role other than being a big counterpunch, which is what the line is, because you're going to get charged with infantry, but you're also going to hit back with 1,000,000 attacks. So give infantry something to do that isn't just fighting, or fighting with one front rank, and the lines will stop. Matthias says 15 goblin units looked cool though. Yes, they did. But when you fill the table with them, it is a bit tricky to deal with. Yes, we do want the infantry to be the backbone of an army, so let's get Linehammer out the rules, let's tweak infantry so they're more useful, so that Linehammer's not necessary as well. Let's rein in the triple save. Let's make flaming attacks get rid of regeneration. That would be a good idea. Let's change the way regeneration works in the first place, because regeneration is a stupid name for what the rule currently is. Because you chop off a monster's head, and then you look up and the head's immediately there. It's not regenerated, it just never left. So it counts for combat res, but that doesn't help you with shooting or anything. So regeneration should just be the amount of wounds you took in the previous turn, start the turn, roll, see if you get those wounds back. So you've got the chance to actually kill it before the regeneration kicks in. I think that is a fair compromise. That would make regeneration work the way something should regenerate. It shouldn't just come back instantaneously. You shouldn't snap your fingers and all your heads grow back. It should be a more gradual process. So I would like to see that as a change. I don't know whether they will because it makes it more complicated, but I think 3 back-to-back saves is too much. So maybe making flaming attacks get rid of regen would fix that. Yeah, 3 saves is just too much. And war machines have already been nerfed enough because of the small amount of damage they do. Cannons doing D3 for the dwarves. Bolt throwers just do 2. Grudge throwers, you could even reduce that to D3 instead of D3 plus 1. Reduce all the war machines to D3 instead of plus 1. And stop regen and ward saves both being able to be taken if you think that's going to power up war machines too much. Yes, there's definitely too much regeneration around, too many ward saves on the big characters that are defining the games at the moment. And they should be support, they should be leading you into battle, but they should be reliant on having troops there to help, and at the moment they don't really need the help. So, definitely too good. What else would I change? What else have we talked about, other than Linehammer and regeneration? The way fleeing and bouncing over units works is weird. The way vortex spells go over units is weird. That should be changed. It's too weird. Propelling a vortex or fleeing all the way across the table because there's nowhere for you to stop. That shouldn't happen. They should rewrite that somehow. You'll always find ways to exploit the way the rules are written. But you can write the rules in such a way that any exploits don't make the game look stupid. And I think that's the most important thing. You can't cut out loopholes, they'll always be there, people will find them, you close them, another one pops up. But you can stop the game looking stupid. And I think that would be a good objective. Don't necessarily look for perfect balance in the game, just make it look cool. How about that? I think that would be fair. Fleeing in multi-combats is half-baked. Yeah, fleeing, there are some issues with fleeing. I think shooting is very weak in the game. It's difficult to finish off units with shooting. In combat, you just win the combat and then you can run them down if you win, so it's really strong. Shooting, you don't get to shoot them and then they run away and then you get to run them down. That doesn't happen. So shooty armies, slow armies like dwarves, if you damage a unit heavily from shooting, they just hide and you don't get any points for them. So change the way the scoring works so that either you get points maybe on a per model basis, that might be too complicated, but the way it works now is complicated. Working out 25% of a unit is complicated enough. So if it was not on a per model basis, then just stop victory points for kills and just bring in proper scenarios so you're actually fighting over something. So you can use units in a more sacrificial way. Chaff would come back, because at the moment a lot of it is just a liability and is going to give away points if it dies. So if you're running a points denial list, you don't want to have any chaff, because if it dies, that's putting you one step closer to losing. So sacrificial units would be back. Infantry would be back because they'd be good at holding areas with their mass numbers. So I think just proper scenarios, and then you don't have to change too much else. That would help infantry a lot. Change the scoring. And I'm going to compare it to Kings of War again, because I think the scenarios in that game are really good. No one plays kill mission. The kill mission is in the rules, but no one plays it because it's just not a good way to play. You have two armies. If one is better than the other, matches up better against the other one. If you're playing kill, that one's just going to win most of the time. If you're playing missions, then you're playing against something other than the opposing army. You can position your units in such a way that you're not engaging the enemy directly, but you're in a good position to strike into critical areas of the battlefield when the time arrives. The opposing army that's maybe going to gun you down in a straight up fight now has to walk forwards to control an area. So gun lines are brought into line a little bit if they become overpowered as a result of any changes. I think overall it just balances the game better when you have something to fight that isn't just the opposing army. Those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think in the chat. The thoughts on any of this stuff, any of the rules queries that came up, weigh in on that. any of the tactics, whether you think Linehammer's the dumbest thing ever, let me know. What you think about the armies I faced and their tactics as well, their army lists, any improvements you could make to any of those, and the dwarf list, and which armies looked cool. There were pictures of all of them towards the end of the video there, so let me know. And don't forget to like the video, obviously, and subscribe. Check out all the links in the description, of course. And I keep meaning to mention all this stuff at the beginning, because the amount of people that get to the end, people probably stop once the final game ends. I should tell people at the beginning to submit and pledge all their life savings to the Patreon or the PayPal link in the description. But I'm going to tell you now anyway. And if you can't afford your entire life savings because you need to buy food or something, then a portion will do as well. And any money that this channel makes, which obviously is not significant, unless you're doing like thousands of views, thousands and thousands of views per video, then you're never going to make as much money as you would just doing a job instead of live streaming. But obviously it's fun as well. So any money this channel makes goes into buying my tournament tickets and buying made-to-order metal dwarves. So if that's something you want to see, then pledge all your life savings now. Other than that, there's Twitter link, there's the Discord server where you can see some cool conversations going on in there about various game systems. And finally, what's coming up? Next week is Clash of Kings, the biggest Kings of War tournament of all time, more than 200 players in Nottingham. I'll be taking my Abyssal Dwarves, so the evil cousins of the Dwarves, like Mantic's version of the Chaos Dwarves. So we'll see how that goes. I've been doing alright with them, and Kings of War is a game I don't need to practice too much, because I've played it so much over the years. I know what I'm doing, and I can usually do alright without much practice in Kings of War. Watch, now that I've said that, I'll get absolutely destroyed. But it's 6 games, and last year with the Abyssal Dwarves I won 4 of them at Clash of Kings out of the 6. So I was quite happy with that, and I actually changed my list for the year based on how that tournament went, because there were certain lists that I struggled with. So any Kings of War fans, you can look forward to seeing that video. There are plenty of upcoming tournaments for Old World and Age of Sigmar over the next few weeks and months as well. So you can see more of that, and of course there's going to be at least once weekly battle reports, mostly Friday evenings. This week I'm probably playing Age of Sigmar with the Stormcast, but there will be more Old World next week most likely. And other than that, I think that's it. So thanks for watching everybody, especially the comments throughout. Very helpful, especially if I'm musing on rules and people weigh on it so we can actually figure out what the answer is during the stream. That's quite helpful as well. So all that remains to be said is good night out there, whatever you are.